Thank you for being here. I'm going to go ahead and call this session of the City of Des Moines Hearing Examiner to order. For the record, today is October 18th, 2024 at 10 a.m. I do want to note that the location for this hearing is changed from just down the street to accommodate some technology issues. And I believe there's signage posted and staff available at the original location to direct attendees to this new location. We have one item on the agenda today, number LUA 2022-0044, which involves a request for master plan approval and a variance to allow for the construction of a 402,380 square foot light industrial building and associated site improvements on an approximately 30-acre vacant property within the business park zone located to the northwest of the intersection of South 216th Street and 20th Avenue South, as well as a consolidated appeal of the SEPA Mitigated Determination of Non-Significance, or MDNS for short, that was issued for the proposal. My name is Peregrine Sorter. I'm a hearing examiner with Laminar Law, whom the city has selected to hold certain land use hearings like this one. We will begin with the SEPA appeal portion of the hearing, where it will be my role to collect evidence in the form of exhibits and testimony to determine whether the appellant, Jennifer Russo, has met her burden to prove that the city's decision to issue the MDNS was clearly erroneous. The format for that portion of the hearing will be: first, the appellant will have the opportunity to call witnesses that she has previously identified on her witness list, and the city and the applicant will have an opportunity to cross-examine those witnesses. Then we'll turn to any applicant witnesses and then any city witnesses. And I may also ask questions of those witnesses. To be clear, members of the public will not have an opportunity to provide comments during this portion of the consolidated hearing, but they will have an opportunity to testify at the permit application portion of the hearing. Now, in the interest of ensuring that members of the public will have an opportunity to provide comments, I would just ask that the parties please try to be efficient in their presentation of witnesses during the SEPA appeal. I would also like to inform members of the public here today that I have read all of the written comments that have been submitted to the city, other than those that I just received today, and I am aware of the concerns that have been raised. And I give written and oral comments the same weight. So any concerns that were raised in your written comments need not be repeated. And then also, for those that may have to leave before we get to the permit appeal, the permit application portion of the hearing, I want to inform you that I will be leaving the record open until the end of the day Monday to allow you to submit written comments in lieu of live testimony. So I think with that, we can get started. I see that the appellant is here. Good morning, Ms. Rousseau. And who do we have on behalf of the applicant?
On behalf of the applicant, my name is Nancy Rogers. I'm the land use attorney.
Good morning, Ms. Rogers. And for the city?
Good morning, Your Honor. Tim George for the city, interim city manager, also city attorney. To my left is our acting city attorney, Matthew Hutchins.
Great, thank you. So let's begin with exhibits. I believe I received 56 exhibits from the appellant, which I'll designate as A1 through A56. Does that sound correct, Ms. Rousseau? Okay. And Ms. Rogers, does the appellant have any objection to those exhibits?
We do not.
Okay, thank you. And does the city have any objections to those exhibits?
No, Your Honor.
Great. And then I believe I received 31 exhibits from the city, designated C1 through C31. Does that sound correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. And then Ms. Rogers, the applicant also listed those exhibits, so I assume you don't have any objection there?
That's correct,
Okay,
yes.
great. Ms. Rousseau, any objection to those exhibits?
No.
Thank you so much. And then I also received one additional exhibit from the appellant, designated B1, correct?
From the applicant, yes.
From the applicant, I'm so sorry.
No worries.
And Ms. Russo, do you have any objection to that exhibit?
No.
Okay, and the city?
No, Your Honor.
Great, so I will deem all those exhibits admitted into the record. With that, Ms. Russo, would you like to present a brief opening statement before we turn to your witnesses?
Your Honor, good morning, everyone, and I'm just here as a concerned citizen, just really trying to save, as you know, our green space. Thank you for hearing everybody's comments and written, and that is really all I have. Thank you.
Great. And then, Mr. George, would you like to present any opening statement before we begin?
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no doubt today that we will hear passionate opinions from residents of Des Moines that care about their neighborhood, that have heartfelt concerns about the environment. But this decision this morning is about evidence in the law and a requirement that the appellant demonstrate that the city's issuance of a mitigated determination of non-significance was clearly erroneous, which she has failed to do. The applicant Panattoni has a right to have their permit applications considered fairly and in accordance with existing city codes and state law. The city did that. We diligently reviewed the proposals under consideration today to ensure consistency with the city's comprehensive plan. All of our city council adopted municipal codes and state law. Throughout this process, the city has thoroughly reviewed the submittals with a keen eye on ensuring that the project respects our comprehensive plan, the city's commitment to environmental sustainability, and state law requirements. The proposal as submitted reflects these values and realizes a goal that was envisioned over 20 years ago, when this property was zoned to facilitate exactly this type of development. Again, we appreciate the public comments and enthusiasm, and remind those in attendance that the city is bound to follow the law in all aspects on this proposal. We have done that, and the city issued an MDNS that complies with city code, state law, and respects the environment. As a result, the city's MDNS was properly issued, and the appellant cannot demonstrate that this decision was clearly erroneous. We ask that this appeal be dismissed.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Would you like to give a statement?
I concur and adopt Mr. George's statement and would also note that the MDNS is entitled to be granted substantial weight by Your Honor.
Great, thank you. Ms. Russo, you can call your first witness.
Your Honor, I would like to call Kathy McDonald.
Where would we like the witnesses? Over here, please. Yeah, and I believe there's a button for your microphone. And if I can go ahead and get you sworn in, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today? Thank you. And can you just spell your name for the recording?
Kathy McDonald, KATHY McDonald.
Thank you. Ms. Russo.
I'm sure.
Good morning, Kathy. Again, may I ask your name?
Pardon?
May I ask your name? Just for record.
My address?
No, your name.
My name. Oh, I just thought I'd guess. Kathy McDonald.
Awesome,
Sorry.
thank you. And I guess I'm just here asking, what is your background and expertise?
My background is that I am an avid walker and enthusiastic hiker, and I spend a lot of time out on our trail here. And I'm also a resident of Des Moines.
And how did you prepare for this today?
I prepared by, when the initial notice went out, I panicked. I realized something I valued was in danger. I found out via social media. I didn't get the notification directly since I wasn't in the zone. Ever since then, I've been doing a lot of research. I've thoroughly walked the land, every briar of it, I think. I've talked to experts. I've recited law. I reached out to Department of Ecology, Department of Fish and Wildlife, and other agencies to find out more about the process. I've learned a lot about SEPA along the way, something I didn't know how to spell before. But that was my prep. Studied code, city code, all to better understand how we got here.
Awesome. And do you mind just going into your testimony?
I'm having a hard time hearing.
Sorry, do you mind just going into your testimony?
Okay. So today I'm going to talk about how the project impacts recreational users. and show how it was incorrectly assessed in the SEPA checklist and the SEPA process overall, and that I feel that laws were also violated as part of that process. And the points I will address is that I'm going to show how the SEPA determination was inaccurately determined, that there wasn't enough data collected around recreational impacts, and that there were many omissions. I'm also going to show how the loss of trail access during construction has a significant impact on our community, and it also interrupts key interconnected trail system, not just one trail. I'm also going to highlight how the experience changes with the new proposed trail and is not equivalent to what we have today, and it's actually a degradation from what we have today. I'm also going to point out that recreational users were not notified as part of this process.
Awesome. And so with that said, do you mind just going through your environmental checklist?
So first I'm starting out by, I just start out by looking at, like I said, I learned what SEPA code is. If you look at DMC 1605-130, which also refers to WAC 197-11-960 about the environmental checklist. The purpose of it is to require all agencies to consider environmental impacts of the proposal before making decisions. And an environmental impact statement must be prepared for all possible projects, proposals with probable significance adverse effects to the quality of the environment. I feel that that has not been done, and that's the point I'm trying to prove here. When we get into, are we showing the presentation?
One
I
second.
realized it wasn't being shown.
We have a presentation that we would like to show if this is.
Sarah, can you facilitate that?
The one that's Kathy. I am on page 6.
And Mr. Examiner,
Yeah.
could I ask, is this one of the pre-filed exhibits or does it file?
I
materials
believe
from
this is just for demonstrative purposes.
thank
And I do allow narrative testimony. It doesn't have to be a back and forth question. So, yeah.
Makes it easier. Thank you.
Yes.
Want me to continue up?
Sure.
I don't want to hold up time. So when we look at what was prepared in the SEPA checklist for this project, there's 3 questions that need to be answered for the SEPA checklist. And one of them is what designated formal and informal recreational activities are in the immediate vicinity. The reference that was replied for the city was one sentence. Basically, 2 parks of the city are in the area, 1 to the north of the property. Was the complete statement. The other one was, would the proposed project have an impact on recreation? If so, describe. And the reply was no recreational uses will be displaced. And then the proposal for any mitigation goes into a new pedestrian trail will be built as part of this project that will connect to the trails that are north, south, and east. Okay. Also reference, if you see to the side, there is a interagency agreement between the city of Des Moines and the port to allow easement in the future for that trail. That was executed in 8/30/2018. I'm going to show that this determination is inaccurate and that that this needs to be addressed through environmental impact statement, or EIS that I'll be calling it from here on out, to thoroughly assess the project. And I'm going to show where the gaps are. First of all, I want to, on the next page, I want the design that's already here. Want to highlight that, that it's going to connect to, as I said, north, south, and east. What is omitted is that it doesn't connect to the trail that exists to the west. It's up on upper left-hand corner. On the next page, I'm going to show my artist rendition, so it's not accurate necessarily, of the lay of the land today and the trails that exist today that are formal city park trails. Both trails are part of the Des Moines Creek Park Trail System. The light green line shows one going along 18th, north to south, and then the west trail drops into our neighborhood. On the next page, I'm going to show the signage at the beginning of each of these trailheads. City of Des Moines Creek has the rules, it has poop bags that are stocked. The city's been maintaining it. I did a fix-it report earlier this spring to maintain a hole on the stairs there from the neighborhood. But as far as I'm concerned, this is the city park trail, the city park signage, and this is on the property. On the next page, on the next slide right here, it shows the staircase and it shows the location of the staircase. My trail might not be 100% accurate because I'm not a mapper, but it's definitely on the space. If you look at that corner is where the stairs are. Once again, you know, the mapping of that trail was originally shown in any of the documents. I know it has since been added, but it's been inconsistently referenced throughout the project. So I don't feel like everyone knew that that trail was there. I felt like it was my conversations with sending letters in and even personal emails with the mayor that really drew the conclusion that, oh, there's a trail there. I didn't feel like it was thoroughly analyzed. On the next page, this is a landscaping diagram from the city's planning documents. On 7/10/24, it shows the trail there on the corner. And then on the next page, I have a lot of slides, but I'm going fast. On the next page, there's several references. A127 references there's no trails on the site, no recreation trails on the site. 179 references only a north to south paved trail. Then 195 references a new trail connecting to 3 of the 4 existing trails, but not to the 4th trail. On the next page, A229 references the paved trail north and south, but no references to the connection across the street, which is the Barnes Creek Trail. And then in the developer's master plan narrative, A196, it says that the existing trail currently ends at the south side of 216th Street, which is incorrect. That trail exists today. People walk on it daily. And that it's going to be extended into the proposed development as though this is an enhancement. When it's not an enhancement, you're basically doing a like-for-like replacement in theory. And one trail exists already. On the next page, it was added back into the plan, as you can see. After a conversation, it was added back in on 10/1 when the announcement for this hearing today was made. It was added back in, but I don't have confidence that the paperwork has been done to add it back in. The interagency agreement, have they been updated or not? What right do we have to this trail if this land is no longer owned by the city of Des Moines? Something I found out through my research. As a trail user, not aware of it at all. If I wouldn't have done my research, I would not have known that this land is no longer owned by the city. So our city gave away our park. And with all these inconsistencies is the reason I'm pushing for an EIS that we thoroughly examine the trail and the impact on the community. My next point is development does not align with the city code, strategic plans, or residents' input. I know in the opening statement, the city said it does align it, but I feel like it doesn't, and I want to bring some evidence to the table. First of all, DMC 1920-010, the park and recreational areas of local significance. The Des Moines Creek Park is highlighted down there in B or 2B, that it is applicable by 1A and 1C, that it is a park of significance, and it also is environmentally critical area. Once again, those signs said Des Moines City Park. On the next slide, we have some local residents. One of them is Patrice Thorelli. I'm not sure if I'm saying her name right. She's a resident and the former Parks and Recreation Manager from 1994 to 2018, who was unable to be here due to a death in the family. But I know you've, Your Honor, I know you've gone through the evidence, but in our submittal, she had quite a lengthy outline of what was done. And as an expert that's been in this area, she's been pushing for the enhancement of the urban forest throughout her tenure as a city parks director and is very upset over this development. She put a lot of time and effort into making this part of the park healthy and enjoyable for everyone. Also, in the SEPA letter from Laura Carmenia, a resident and also someone who works as an ecologist for the Department of Ecology, who's also been doing restoration project for 28 years and a grassroots Friends of Des Moines Creek. She led that group of volunteers to maintain the forest for over 2 decades. She is also saying that, you know, years and money have been put into this forest to make it less invasive and enhance the urban forest. So a lot of work that will be totally wiped out from this development that has been done over the time. These are both local residents and experts in the area. On the next page, beginning of this year, I believe the end of December, the city had done a survey of the citizens to get the opinion of what we want. And the top priority was preserving natural space. With 409 votes out of 482 participants in that survey, we made it clear that preserving natural space even came before public health and safety. Then on next, I know this is extensive evidence, and we're not going to go through it all here. I'm not going to put you through it. But we did submit, there's public comments from the SEPA. I know you said you read them, Your Honor. There was from 27 different parties. I admit to writing 2 because once I learned more about the SEPA process, I provided more details on it. And also, we also have public comments from letters, just on letters from people that live right on the 15th Avenue area where it butts against this development. And there was 16 parties out of, you know, not that many other houses there that put letters specific to their concerns over a variety of things, not just recreation necessarily. I just want to put it on the record. I also created an online survey when this all started, and I worked with Jenny to we collected 365 hand-signed petition signatures, and we also collected online signatures, which have now gone to 1,068 as of this morning, but as of 10/2, when I submitted my evidence, it was 999. But we did have a lot of interest in the voice of the people, and pointing out that that number is more than the survey the city did itself in response. To highlight that. And on the next few pages, I just have some examples to call out. I'm not going to necessarily read them all, but a lot of it is around the beauty of Des Moines being destroyed. This is a summary that was in the, that Jason, I believe, summarized of the notes of all the letters that were brought in. This affects the drainage. The Department of Ecology had a concern about a permit or a dam being done. The Water District has a concern about their wells that are in that area. There's loss of tree canopy, multiple times mentioned, wildlife habitat, biodiversity, the mammals, the habitat, pollutants, continued development, detrimental to the salmon. I'm just highlighting some of the points. Next page. And then around the health concerns and that, tearing down 500 trees with the air pollutants in the air, the not listening to residents. Residents' priorities aren't a priority to the city. Concern about the removal of trees, vital to our community. So this is just a sampling of the feedback that was sent out. I just wanted to be a voice for the other people that are put in. Then on this page, this was also in the feedback letters, was that this is a visual example of 2013 of the green space that we have lost in this same area. We've lost chunk of forest after chunk of forest after chunk of forest. And now you're getting into where our city parks are. Those weren't city park area, but they protected that city park. You can see the watershed there that goes into the sound. That's 135 acres, not counting this 30 acres. They're being eroded. All right, another point I want to make is the elimination of parking at 216th and 18th Avenue Trailhead today, with the sign I had showed you before. Will have impact to the trail access. The next page, I have a visual of that parking space. It's not huge, but several cars park there, and people do park there on a regular basis. I know regular walkers, we talk. I know a couple that parks there every day. Across the street is the Barnes Creek Trailhead parking. Very minimal parking, like 5 or 6 spaces. Could be expanded, I don't know, but right now you're eliminating a parking space to walk onto the trail. On the plans on the right side there, it's really just that there's no street parking along 20th Avenue there, and the driveway, the private drive that was the former Lot C, there's no parking available there. So in the new plans, there's no parking at either of those trail entrance points there. Just parking across the street, you're relying on the trailhead across the street. That'll impact access. Next page. All right, during construction, trail users will not have trail access. This is the one that hits me the most. This is an interconnected trail system. It connects, if you look on the next page, to the south, you have Barnes Creek Trail. Then you go up north and you connect, as I showed previously, you can connect to the main Des Moines Creek Trail that takes you down to the marina and all the activities we have at the marina. And then you can go the other direction, northeast, to Sea-Tac. On the Sea-Tac end of the trail, we just got done with Section C. That's part of the Lake to Sound trail system that King County is building. They have a few more sections to complete, and we'll have a complete trail system all the way from Renton all the way to our marina. We are basically severing that tie. If you take out that green chunk in the middle, you're severing your tie to this trail system. So anyone using this trail is a throughput is also being impacted, not just the local residents that use this trail to get onto the main trail. The Barnes Creek Trail right now is part of that WSDOT land that was, all this was involved with 509 and reserved. They're in the process, if you look on the next page, they're on the process of enhancing the wetlands and improving it and eventually building a trail that will be continuous through. Right now it's in a few chunks. But this is from a WSDOT blog when they were announcing the project, and they're in the middle of doing that now. It's going to take a few years, but this huge trail system is being enhanced everywhere except for this one lot. It is being destroyed. And then after construction complete, it will not be the same recreational experience. With the removal of all the tree canopy and adding in the industrial building, a parking lot, lighting, we'll be now more in the heat, the rain, the noise, replacing it with young growth versus mature growth will take decades to give us the same trail experience. I want to give an example of what the trail experience is today so people understand that have not been on the site. The next slide. This is from 15th Avenue as you go left to right and then down again. It's the trail experience as you walk along. You're in heavily shaded woods, natural plants, and then the bottom there, you can sort of see that's the intersection that connects up to the 18th Avenue Trail, where they both go down to the creek on the next few slides. At this point, you're on city land. Once you get, the first probably 2 photos are on this property land, roughly estimating it, haven't walked it, and then the rest are on city land. And then on the next slide, it continues on and it goes down a set of stairs and across the creek. That is the only bridge to cross the creek from the south side of town. We lose access to this bridge during construction, we'll lose access to our trail system. Or we'll be wading through water, I guess. On the next slide, it shows the 18th Avenue experience. Pages here. All right, the beginning of it, you start out on a slightly paved area because that was a city street. That was formerly 18th Avenue. The history of this land is that this land was taken from our community. There were houses on this land. This was a neighborhood. It was tore down for the airport noise zone. When it was tore down in the early 90s, it was then vacant since. This land has been vacant. It has been used as a playground for the neighborhood. In addition to the 2 formal trails, there are many informal trails. mountain bike junks, you name it, there are along this forest. People have been recreating in here since the 90s. And this is almost like it's being taken from us again. It was taken from us once. I mean, I talked to residents that grew up with the friends in that neighborhood. They moved away, but they remember it. We have second generation in there also. This land has been taken once, and now it's being taken again. But if you continue on, it gives you experience of the trail up into that meet me point on the next slide. It's wooded, dark, and protecting us. On the next slide, it shows you the area where the new trail will be built. Definitely more of a meadow, not that it matters because this will all be torn down and then rebuilt. So taking what we have today, mature, and tearing it down, it's not going to be the same experience. Takes an average of 20 to 30 years for a forest canopy to recover, depending upon how mature the trees are to begin with. Even with a combination, you're not going to get the effects of a tree canopy that you have today. And also pointing out that this is already a marginalized community. We live under the airport noise all day long. And this is our sanctuary from that noise. I think that needs to be considered in an EIS. If this is not just an ordinary piece of land. We are already a marginalized community. Then on the next page. So if the 15th Avenue Trail is going to be preserved, as the new plans are saying, it's still not going to have the same natural experience. You're going to be pretty much sandwiched between, there's a cliff wall there, not far from the edge of the property line. And you're also going to be sandwiched between a cliff and a parking lot. Even with some tree cover saved, if that's possible, it's still not going to be the same experience. You're going to see through the trees. Even today, when you go up on the Sea-Tac side where the previous phases of the development are, all you see is cement walls with graffiti tagged on them. It's not the same experience. The 20th Avenue entrance is only going to be sidewalk access, as I pointed out before. And it's really only accessible for business park employees. It's not really beneficial to our community. There's no houses there. It's just business park. So employees on their break will enjoy it, but it's not really a value to the community. The new trail, if you look down from the bottom, it goes up, it weaves around to the retention pond that exists today. That's nothing but a bunch of weeds. You continue around, they're going to restore the wetlands there. So hopefully there'll be some green there. But then after that, you're going parallel with the private drive, which is going to be all semi-truck traffic. And then you go along the clip of the edge of the parking lot. Even with a bunch of trees, that's not going to be the same experience. It's not the piece of the forest that we have today. And to me, that is a major impact. And then additionally, you're putting in a new trail that isn't continuous with the rest of its environment. If you go across the street to Barnes Creek Trail today, that is a trail. You have a paved trail, you're going to cross the street, and you're going to have a big wood chip trail. So if you're a bicycle user or a stroller pusher, you're not going to have a continuous trail from that experience. If you go down, you're going to go right onto dirt. So that paved trail does not really provide a real big advantage other than from business park employees to wander around at their lunchtime.
Ms. McDonald, I don't want to rush you. I just want to get kind of gauge how many more
Not that much.
slides. Okay.
I'm wrapping up.
Thank-
Okay.
thank you.
Sorry. And another city code on the next slide I want to call out is the 1920-020. And this one is about noise at parks and noise levels at parks. And just based on the tree canopy removal alone, there's going to be a noise difference. I'm not a noise engineer, but there's no data study. There's been no noise study in any of the studies done to date, other than for the salmon. So what about us humans? What is that noise study? What is the delta? And are we adhering to this city code of the noise if we don't have the data collected? On the next page is the SEPA response to the noise. And it's basically saying there might be some more during construction, but no net gain of noise. But that doesn't consider the park and the experience of the park users that will have that new trail now, what that delta is in noise. Considering this is already a marginalized community that's besieged with noise on a daily basis. And the last point I want to make is the recreational trail users receive no notification. I know the city code at 1605-190 on the next page, you know, is a 300-foot radius. And if you look at the next page is the map, the green areas are where the notifications were sent. But I want to highlight that a majority of the neighbors in that little neighborhood right there that are immediately impacted in the red box were not notified. Well, it's not in the 300-foot radius. It's also does impact their access to the park. You can see how close they are to the trailhead. The fourth house from the end there is, you can almost throw a stone to the trailhead, but they were not notified. While we were adhering to it, I think the fact that no recreational uses will be displaced, the SEPA code on the next page leaves it up to the discretion of the SEPA official to decide if additional signage may be required. Also, WAC encourages public involvement in decisions that affect environmental quality. I feel that at a minimum, trail users should have been notified of the impact just by signs at the trailheads at a minimum. Because if it wasn't for my research, I wouldn't even known this trail was impacted. So in summary, I want to highlight all the points I made to bring it to a wrap on the next page. I agree. I firmly believe that the recreation impacts were not accurately assessed, omitted any reference to the city park trails that exist today as though they didn't exist, omitted that this space has been used informally for decades, omitted to the presence of the 15th Avenue entrance, which has since been added, but it's omitted from all the paperwork, and omitted to impact of the parking, omitted the impact of the trail loss during construction, omitted the change in recreational experience, omitted to address the noise impact, and there's no measures or studies for that impact. And the proposed development doesn't align with the plans of the city, the residents' input. I think this development, as I said, in the 90s, was taken from us. It's being taken again. I think this is a park of local significance, and I think we should keep our park.
Ms. Russo, do you have any other questions of your witness?
No, I don't. Thank you, Kathy.
Mr. George?
Thank you. Ms. McDonald, are you aware that there's no parks on the parcels that are proposed to be developed?
I'm aware the city gave our land away, but it still has a city park sign.
Okay, so but
It's a city park sign to me.
okay, that's on the entrance from the neighborhood.
Entrance in the
Trail
neighborhood and the
entrance.
entrance of 18th Avenue. There's two signs,
Okay.
as I showed in the diagram. The
So,
sign says it's city park and the city park's maintaining it. How would I know it's not a city park?
but you referenced the parks master plan, and so I don't know if you've reviewed that piece, but there is not a city park on either of these parcels.
There's a city park sign at
Right.
the entrance. How would anyone else? It's common sense. It's a city park. It's
Okay.
been used. I use it every day. I used it yesterday. How is it not a city park? Now, if a
Ms.
report-
McDonald, please just respond to
I know, I'm sorry.
his questions.
But were you aware in the Des Moines master plan that designates city parks that there are no city parks on these parcels? Were you aware of that?
aware of it, I found out about it through this research.
Because these two parcels are owned by the Port of Seattle,
Now they are, yeah.
and so the city doesn't own parks on Port of Seattle property.
But the city's maintaining them.
So are you aware that through this proposal, the Port of Seattle would be providing the city with permanent easements for public access across these trails?
Only across the one. 2018, it only references the one trail.
So where there's no current city trails on this property, and there are no easements that would allow the public to use them, through this project, there will now be permanent public access on improved trails across these properties. Is that correct?
I'm sure that's correct.
Okay, and then I think, you referenced the entrance off of 15th Avenue. And that is reflected in the updated plans, and that's demonstrated in Exhibit C8, the master plan site. So your testimony was that you just weren't sure if that was gonna be a requirement?
I'm not sure all the paperwork is done to make that done. Is it an interagency agreement? There's no documents to say that that's a fact. It was just drawn into the diagram and sent out with this public notice.
And then you made a reference for like trails. Which ones were those specifically?
What?
You said like for like. I think maybe it was in reference to some trail locations. You had said there was a trail there, and then there'd be a like for like trail.
I'm not sure.
I guess just the last question. You referenced the survey, which I think it's an exhibit in your city survey results. It's document list, document 5 of appellant's document list, and you had referenced a survey that indicated that preserving natural space was the #1 sentiment expressed of the people that responded to the survey. So are you aware that this survey wasn't, it was not a statistically valid survey?
Was not what?
Statistically valid?
How would I know that? It was a city survey that was for the comprehensive plan. How would I know it's statistically valid?
Okay, I think because
I'm not
in the
an
documents.
expert at
Well, I
surveys.
guess in the documents, it says, although the survey results are not statistically valid. So that it was just right out of the document that you guys provided. Your Honor, I have no further question.
Ms. Rogers?
I have no questions for this witness.
Okay, great. Thank you. Ms. Russo, you can call your next witness. If we could, I'm sorry, if we could avoid from responding, thank you.
Quick question. Are we not able to redirect?
You had further questions based on that? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you
Okay.
can do some redirect. It has to be based on the questions that they asked. You can come back up to the stand. Sorry about that.
My hearing isn't what it used to be. I'm sorry. Airport noise.
So Kathy, quick question for you. They are calling this an improved trail. Do you think the trail, if the trail is mitigated, do you think it will be approved? Why or why not?
Absolutely not.
Can you expand just a touch?
Just the experience. I mean, I hike a lot. I spend a lot of time in backcountry. This is my reprieve when I'm not in backcountry. I work from home, so I need that reprieve. When I go into the forest, just today, when I walk from my house to the trailhead, I'm in the street. I get rained on, I get the sun beating on me, my dog gets overheated. I get into the shade of the forest, we both go, it's just that piece that you get, and replanting, well, it'll be good in 20 years, and I know that's a good thing. We do want to have a healthy forest, but taking what we have today and not fixing it versus replanting it is not the same experience. And it also goes through a business park. I mean, you can't hide that. You can try, but you can't hide that.
Thank you so much.
Mr. George, anything further based on that?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Rogers,
No, sir.
thank you. You can be excused.
Your Honor, next up, I ask Barbara McMichael.
Hello, Miss McMichael. Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today? Thank you. And if you could please just spell your name for the recording. Thank
Your
you.
Honor, we need a microphone.
Oh, can you spell your name one more time so we can just get that?
BARBARAMCMICHAEL.
Thank you. Ms. Rousseau, whenever you're ready.
Good morning. May I ask your background or expertise for this?
Well, I am, I guess I'm, you'll find my page for that. I guess I'm why I'm credible as a credible witness. Okay. I have lived experience. I have lived here for 27 years. And before that, with the exception of living 10 years off in LA and Boston, I grew up over on Military Road. So I have known this area my whole life. So that's probably one of the things I wanted to talk about. I have always, well, shall I just go ahead?
Go ahead and
My
just go with
notes.
your, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go for it. Girl.
All right. First, I want to say why I'm going to testify today. And I really appreciated Kathy's really excellent testimony. I wish I were that good. I have since a couple of years ago, I have a neurological condition that can't be diagnosed, but it can be treated. And so I've been working with all these great people as we've been trying to prepare our testimony. And I'm just not keeping up the way I used to be able to. So I don't have any legal stuff, but I do have some facts that I'd like to talk about today. I'd like to talk about how living under the flight path of Sea-Tac Airport with its associated environmental problems of air pollution and noise pollution and tree canopy eradication have impacted the health of my neighbors and obviously my poor old self. And I think all of that, when we have opportunities to consider our environment in this time of climate change, let's think globally, but act locally. We have so many opportunities, and we have missed opportunities time and time again, bit by bit. And it's just, it literally might be killing us. So anyway, so that's a little bit about what I want to talk about. I think that this deserves a closer look. I think it deserves an environmental impact statement. And going through the records associated with this case, I saw that the mitigated determination of non-significance, which I will now from now on say MDNS, checked a lot of the boxes on the SEPA's environmental checklist. And if our planning department were located in Ellensburg or in Chehalis or in Mount Vernon, it'd be entirely adequate. But it was issued by the planning department of Des Moines, Washington. And we have all of these really significant impacts. And I think our little city almost entirely lies under the flight paths, the 3 flight paths that are coming into Sea-Tac Airport. So this is a major international hub. It's the 8th busiest airport in the country. So when considering what environmental assets we can trade off and so on, or assure in our community, I think it's irresponsible to overlook the flight path associated environmental harms that are impacting our community. So probably more than any other city in the state. And I've got a couple of maps to show in a second. But first, if we can go to my first slide, which should be, we'll see it in a second. This is for Barbara. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm folding in my lap. Oh, like that. Okay, I've already cried my way through that, so we can go on to the next one. Okay, so back to the qualifications finally. So lived experience, 27 years in the flight path. This is a photograph my husband took of Air Force One. Now he took it with a telephoto lens as it was approaching our house. It was coming in on the approach to the second runway. And of course, we were out there running to, waving at the president. But the plane flew immediately overhead. And you can't see it here, but it has a silver underbelly. And as we were waving and I looked up, I could see the purple flowers of my rhododendron bush reflected in that plane. That's how low the planes are over my house. And I'm 12 blocks away. I'm at the same level of the park, but 12 blocks to the south. So, so I think that's lived experience that I can talk about, the noise and the air pollution and so on. Let's move on to the Forterra map, please. The next one, which I'm sorry, it's kind of small. Oh, no, go back to that map. Okay. So I served twice on Patrice Thorell's Des Moines Parks, Recreation, Senior Services Master Planning Committee in 2015. I wrote it down somewhere. 2009 and 2016. That's a citizen-based committee. We spent dozens of volunteer hours when we did this. It was over, 6 to 9 months of time. And we were talking about the parks that we were going to be working with. And so Forterra had a map. They were employed. I'll get to them in a minute. But if you see that first long, in the center, the top long strip, that is the Barnes Creek Trail. And you can see how, it's going to be hard to describe, but you can see how it widens. That is, when we were serving on that Parks Master Planning Committee, we understood that that was going to be a Des Moines park. We checked. So many of us were concerned about that level, and we checked. And yes, that's going to be, so that was in the plan. And as recently as the most recent one, it was in the plan, but then the city council voted the other way because the city council has been having financial difficulties. So there's been a lot of good faith by the citizens of Des Moines who have volunteered their time to serve on these sorts of committees, that was going to be a park. More life experience.
And then I want to give you a lot of leeway here, but if we can tie this into the environmental review of this project.
And this is probably where my brain thing. So I had surgery yesterday for cancer, and I came home and I was working on this, and I pulled an all-nighter. So I'm not going to be totally with it. So I'll beg a little indulgence, but I will try. I'm a pretty fast talker, so I'll get through
Great, thank you. I just want to make sure we get to
I
everyone
know,
here today.
and I listening to Kathy, I was thinking, oh man, I hope I'm not so far off, and I apologize to everybody. I'll try not to take too much time. So anyway, so I guess what I'm trying to establish here is as an active PTA member, when my kids were in school, I served on the local library board. I'm currently the precinct committee officer for my local precinct. I will digress a little bit here to say that I met a local precinct committee person from the opposite party who lives on just on the other side of Des Moines Creek Trail, but on the Sea-Tac border. And he said that we met at a Part 150 meeting, which is air noise impacts. And we kind of met over the same placard. And I asked, so who are you? Because he seemed to know what he was doing. And he said, well, he was this precinct committee officer. And he said every single household on his street had cancer. So this is just another, more evidence. And I know it's anecdotal, but we'll get to a map that shows that we are at least data points on a map. So I've done art projects, a couple of art projects along Des Moines Creek. I'm a founding member of the steering committee of Defenders of Highline Forest, but I joined Defenders of North Sea-Tac Park first out of solidarity. But I am a south of the airport person, and I felt that preservation of trees was an important thing for my community to know about. And I was able to, I'm not saying it was me alone, but my dear peers and colleagues, part of, I've got to go faster, part of North Sea-Tac Park allowed us to call it Defenders of Highland Forest. So do I have a time limit? Just keep going.
Perhaps you can direct your witness to the issues that are relevant to this appeal.
Just real quick, what are your concerns for the health disparities map?
Health disparities map.
It's in the middle.
Well,
of-
when I, if we could go to that slide, please. And I don't know if it will reflect very well. I hope everybody here is familiar with the Department of, well, yeah, get past all that, sorry. The purple, yeah. I hope everybody is familiar, and if you aren't, please go visit the Department of Health's Environmental Health Disparities map. It shows that, you know, the area between Seattle and Tacoma is the worst impacted, and the area of Des Moines is one of the worst places. And you can see the little color coding on the left. Number 10 is the worst. Well, I live in zone number 10. Guess what else is in zone number 10? Mount Rainier High School, Pacific Middle School, Midway Elementary, and the Barnes Creek Trail up to 216th is in zone number 10. And then immediately across 216th, it turns into that lighter purple. So right where that lighter purple is, that would be the extension which we have always thought was a Des Moines Park. And I just wonder if, you know, taking away the trees that are there now will turn that into another zone 10, because you're just putting another warehouse there. So, so that's my concern about the health disparities. As part of that map, the Department of Health said, and I think we can go to the next slide, please. I hope I got it right. Yes. Said that they hope this map will provide new and vigorous insights in where public investments can be prioritized to buffer environmental health impacts on Washington's communities so that everyone can benefit from clean air, clean water, and a healthy environment. So I know Jenny lives in the apartment right across the street. I know that, you know, there are families from all different nations there. There are a lot of Spanish speakers. And so I don't know how we're going to buffer that community if we build another warehouse. I have seen the plantings and they aren't terrible. They're nice, but it's not a park. Okay, let's see if I can move on and stay on point. So I was going to, I do want to review for the audience because I'm not sure that you all know that, but I just wanted to talk about the SEPA Act. So if we could go to the SEPA Act slide, which I hope is next. Okay, so just this was the motivation for why legislators at the state level wanted to create the State Environmental Policy Act. So let's just look at that. To encourage productive and enjoyable harmony between people and their environment. To promote efforts which will prevent or eliminate damage to the biosphere. So that's asking us to think globally. Stimulate public health and welfare and enrich the understanding of the ecological systems, and you can read the rest. So I just think that's important to keep in mind. There was an expectation from the state that this was going to provide people, little people like us, who aren't with the corporations, who don't have, you know, well-educated lawyers, that it would give us a chance to speak up for the stuff that we think is important about our community.
Ms.
So,
Rochelle,
Barbara.
perhaps you can ask some
Yep.
questions.
Barbara,
go ahead.
I'm going to go ahead and ask a couple more questions
Okay.
from you. It states on here that your first point is you're talking about the MDNS and the failure to acknowledge the community's extraordinary vulnerability to regard the air quality concerns. Can you give a little bit more understanding as to the air quality concerns that you have done your research on?
Well, there was a pretty minor mention of and it depends on the way you read it. There was a mention of emissions and minor dust. And there was a question about off-site sources of emissions, and the answer that was given is none are known to exist to our knowledge. And I read it a different way. And I thought that maybe they were speaking only about Panettone's off-site sources of emissions. But when I read off-site sources of emissions, I was thinking, yeah, we've got emissions. We've got airplanes flying overhead all the time. So that was my understanding of off-site emissions.
Mr. Examiner,
Yeah.
I very much appreciate the passion and emotion of this witness's testimony, but it is simply not relevant
Yeah.
to the project.
We are straying away from the issues that are relevant
Okay,
here,
I'm
which
so
is the
sorry.
environmental review for this specific project. So, Ms. Rousseau, if you could ask some questions to get some
Yeah,
relevant testimony, otherwise we need to
I'm
move
so
on.
sorry.
And I do appreciate you being here. Thank
Mm.
you so much.
Okay, so when it does come to the MDNS failure to address the noise impacts, you gave a little bit of information as to the Des Moines City Planning Department and their responsibility. Do you mind giving just a touch more about that?
I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't.
It's on your second point. It's about halfway down. It starts talking about your aircraft noise control overhead. Do you mind just expanding about the noise?
So are we moving beyond the air quality?
We're on point two.
Do you have a way you can ask her a question that would be like a yes or no response, a
Oh,
more
boy,
direct
I'm-
question?
What would
I-
you like to
I-
say about air quality and noise?
Well, thank you. What I want to say is that I know our local legislators, for the state legislators for the 33rd district have been very concerned about both air quality and noise, but specifically about air quality. And I didn't see that air quality was mentioned in this particular project. And so I guess I just wanted to say that air quality is a big deal in the third. Maybe I'm missing something again. So, yeah. This is very humiliating. I'm so sorry, everybody.
It's all good. It's all understandable. Take a moment, take a breath. Again, surgery yesterday. So during this air quality test in the tree canopy, it is talking about the health benefits and the effects, or should I say, not the benefits, the health effects of how this is going to do with the air quality. Do you mind expanding on that just a touch? With the loss of trees.
So, okay. So I know there are studies done there in the Forterra Green Cities Partnership that point to the utility of trees to serve as barriers to sound. And while we can't control the sound that goes overhead, that's FAA stuff. I think on a ground level, we could think about the kind of sound that comes across to us from the removal of trees that comes directly across to us now from the airport after the removal of so many trees that have already happened due to warehouse building and due to the 509 extension and so on. So I think losing more trees is going to have an impact on our community. Was that what you were looking for?
Do you think an EIS study would help this?
I would think so. I would certainly hope so. It would look more deeply into it, yes.
Okay, and then just real quick with your conclusion, do you just want to give a quick conclusion and then?
I guess I understand. I mean, I attend every city council meeting, and I understand our city's challenges. I think the race to I think that the imbalance toward economic development overall has been very misguided and has left a lot of our community feeling very hurt and unlistened to. And I think that is, and we're the taxpayers. We're the ones who pay the staff to be, kind of adhering to our values, and it's not happening. And I think that's making a lot of us very disappointed and angry. And, when the staff comes in and they shake all the developers' hands and they don't even bother to say
Right,
hello
we're
to-
straying from
Yep, I'm
the
straying.
Thank you,
issues here.
Barbara.
Thank you so much. Hold on a second, Ms. McDaniel. I want to see if the other parties have any questions for you. Mr. George,
No questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Rogers?
No questions for me.
Thank you for being here.
Next, I would like to call Lloyd Little.
Hello, can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
Thank you. And can you just go ahead and state and spell your name for the recording?
Yes, Your Honor. My name is Lloyd E. Lytle Jr., and it's Lloyd, middle initial E, Lytle, Jr.
Thank you.
Good morning, Lloyd. Can you give me just a little bit of what your background and expertise is, please?
Yes, Judy. Been a citizen of Des Moines for about 20 years now. I have a biochemistry degree from the University of Washington. I've spent about 10 years in research, scientific research field. And then I'm currently a science educator. I teach physics, biology, forensic science, a number of other subjects for the Federal Way Public Schools. Oh, and I do a lot of advocacy work for orcas and salmon. I work with Center for Whale Research, Langley Whale Center, elimination, yeah, that's something I'm involved in.
Thank you so much. And do you mind just going into your testimony as to why you're here today?
Well, and then, Ms. Russo, I'm just going to ask that you ask more directed questions, just in the interest of getting through this today. I'm going to allow some narrative responses, but rather that it's not a public comment period where the witnesses just come up. You have to ask some questions to direct them to the issues with the environmental review.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Lloyd, can you just give a little bit of an explanation as to the land erosion that is going on around the development?
Yes, Judy. Ms. Keen, I believe I have a PowerPoint in the, which I've detailed. I would like to show, in contrast to what the city and the lawyer representing the developers said, I will show in this presentation why this current development is not in line with City of Des Moines Comprehensive Plan, Washington state laws, and environmental sustainability. Thank you. First slide, please. Okay, so I walked the area with Sandy and Judy on 10/15. One thing we noticed right off the bat was there's a large erosion gully around a tributary creek that feeds into Des Moines Creek. And I guess it used to be pretty much flat soil there. Judy put in notice about the erosion a couple years ago. Since then, it doesn't appear like the city has done anything about it. We walked up this tributary creek and followed it to see where the source was eastward. Basically, and we found a couple wetland
Yeah.
slash.
I need to register an objection. What the witness just pointed to is lands that are essentially off-site of the project site, and we are here on a SEPA appeal for this particular project.
I
So-
agree. We need to get this to this project and the environmental review for this project. So if you can ask more pointed questions, I think that'll make this process go a lot smoother.
So when you are speaking about the land erosion and the retaining ponds, can you speak a little bit more about how that retaining pond is going to affect the new development?
Yes, Ms. King, may I see the next slide? And I would say, in response, one of the Des Moines comprehensive plans, which I will show, is you have to look at the surrounding area of any development, and that's in the Des Moines comprehensive plan. So I believe I am incorrect in showing this, or I am correct in showing this. Okay, so what we found is that they're likely overflowing, and that's what's causing the erosion. There's 2 wetland/retaining ponds up there, and we believe this hazard is not recognized in the mitigation. So the city is not acknowledging this, and it could affect this development as well. Next slide, please. Here's a picture of the erosion. You can see this apparently used to be level ground. You see probably 5-6 feet of erosion there, and there's a creek running right along the bottom there.
Is this on site?
This is right next to where they're planning on cutting down the trees. So this is directly below their lot line. So it's going to have a direct effect on this, and I will show that in my future, in the next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is a United States Geographical Service landslide susceptibility map. You can see not much problems if it's light yellow. If it's red or brown, you have a big problem. It's very susceptible. And you can see that that brown area is about right here. I would say it even goes into their lot line, their property. So this is what I'm saying. It's connected. You're overlapping. And so they want to turn this water absorbing area into concrete. Concrete does not absorb water. And so it's all going to flow downhill. Water runs downhill. And it's going to flow into Des Moines Creek. Now they want to build a new retaining wetland up here. But we've already got overflow.
I think you have to
Likely.
speak into the mic, otherwise. it's
I'm
not
sorry,
making
we've
it.
already got overflow from the 2 previous ones. So now essentially you have an atmospheric river, you have a heavy rainstorm, which we get now more commonly with the climate change. You're going to double the erosion power because those other 2 would flow into this one, and then they both going to flow right into that brown area. They're going to flow into the area with the highest difference between high potential and a low potential. That's where everything goes. And it's going to go right into that red and brown area, which will go right into Des Moines Creek, which you can see that line up there, a little white line. Next slide, please. This is approximate. That's not to scale or exact measurements, but that's basically what you're looking at. Their development would go right there, and then the new retention pond would go right there. So all that water is going to flow in that direction. Next slide, please. And there's our location maps. That's where we were. We're right on the edge of the development. And then there's the other 2 retaining ponds up there. And so they all flow right through there. Next slide, please. Okay, so Des Moines is a salmon-bearing creek under Washington state law, WAC 173-201A-310. Protection and maintenance of existing and designated uses. These must be maintained and protected. No degradation may be allowed that would interfere with or become injurious to our existing designated uses. So this goes against that because this development through erosion right on a USGS determined landslide area, you're going to destroy Des Moines Creek if you have a major overflow. Next slide, please. This is just upstream of us. This is Sea-Tac. So this was in April. They're releasing salmon. the salmon will live about a year here, and then they're gonna flow out to Puget Sound. They're gonna come right through Des Moines. And so, next slide, please.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Just
but
real
we're gonna-
quick, yeah, I
we-
hear you.
We need to get back to a question and answer style format here.
Just real quick for you, Lloyd.
Yes.
Do you mind expanding just a little bit then, about how the erosion will affect the
Absolutely.
salmon, the wildlife?
Next slide, please. I show that in the next slide. Okay, so Orca needs salmon. I'm gonna come back to that. Can we go about 2 slides ahead? Next slide, please. Okay, salmon need clear gravel and clean riverbeds to lay eggs and spawn. If you fill in a river with soil from erosion, you're gonna cover that gravel and they can no longer spawn. If we could see the next slide, please. This is an example of what you want. You want the clear gravel, the salmon can work with that. And that's what we have. But if you have if you're gonna develop right on the edge of a salmon-bearing creek, right where you have this huge landslide susceptibility, and you already have evidence of overflow, you're gonna dump tons of soil on top of that gravel, and you're gonna wipe out the salmon population. And the salmon upstream of us, which is what I was showing with the other one from Sea-Tac, they're gonna get cut off and they won't be able to bear salmon anymore. They're just gonna die.
So, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but to summarize your testimony, you're stating that the development on this property is going to have impacts to the salmon-bearing stream on the adjacent property. That's what you're,
Yes, Your Honor. That is my line of argument.
thank you. Ms. Russo, then can you get to the next question?
And then real quickly, do you mind addressing the protection of existing and functioning riparian of the exhibit in the habitat?
The riparian?
Yes.
Yes. Next slide, please. Okay, next one. Next one, please. Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is the Washington State Riparian Task Force. Riparian has to do with anything on the banks of a river or wetlands relating to rivers and streams. So I'm connecting this to the wetlands proposed, the wetlands that are being destroyed, and the Des Moines Creek, which is being affected by this development, direct connection. It was a recommendation of the task force to protection of existing and functioning riparian creek. And this is in line with the Washington State Growth Management Act and Shoreline Management Act. So this is how I'm relating it back to Washington state law, and that the appellant is correct in that it goes against Washington state law, and the current mitigation and proposed development is not in line with Washington state law, and the direction it's going. Next slide, please. So recommendation 1 was to protect existing healthy, high-quality riparian areas, which Des Moines Creek is, and where the riparian area does not meet the riparian guidance for fully functioning riparian areas, but provides some level of riparian ecosystem function, ensure the current level is not degraded. And I don't believe that the developer or the city has shown that it will not be degraded. They're putting this development right on the edge of the United States Geographical Service, high landslide susceptibility area, and they're doubling the potential overflow power because you're putting 2 retention ponds right next to each other. And you get a heavy rainstorm, they're gonna flow right over into that landslide area and potentially fill in the creek, destroying, and that's not in line with protecting the riparian area, which is Washington State Riparian Task Force recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Russo, do you have? any other
That's
questions?
it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. George, do you have any cross-examination?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Rogers?
No, sir.
Thank you. Be excused. And then, Ms. Russo, were you planning on calling all the witnesses that are on your witness list today?
I have one more.
One more? Great.
Yep.
Thank you. can go ahead and call your witness.
Sorry about that, yes. May I call Sandy Hunt to the stand?
It's fine. Thank you for being here. If we can go ahead and get you sworn in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
And can you just go ahead and state and spell your name for the record?
Sandra L. Hunt, Sandra, middle initial L, Hunt. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stowe?
Good morning, Sandy. Do you mind just giving your background and expertise as well?
Sure. I am a defender of Highline Forest. Barbara did mention that. Defenders of Highline Forest, there's a couple of us here today. I do not live in Des Moines, but I was the past president of the Highline Education Association. And I worked for 20 years in Highline, and including over at Madrona, which is several stones throw away from here in Sea-Tac. So I've watched, as a teacher in that area, I have watched the development and the loss of, I think it's at least 87 acres of trees. And so I got roped into this and very excited to be supporting just as an activist and a citizen who cares about trees in the Highline area.
Awesome, thank you so much. So do you mind just speaking on the SEPA laws that you had mentioned?
Sure. I did a lot of research on this. I read a lot of the reports and really tried to hone our focus in on what we feel is being omitted. So a lot of reports have been done. And as Barbara actually mentioned, those reports would be sufficient in other communities, but because of the situation of the location of the land and the impacts that are occurring over time, we believe that the SEPA rules apply here in a definitely a little different way, or in a unique way. So because if we could put the PowerPoint out, I want to talk about those SEPA rules briefly that we believe go into play here, and then apply them to the site and look specifically at the ones that go into location and then effects. So if we move to the next slide. Okay, so the determination of significance and our evidence of impact. So the threshold, the SEPA rules provide legal standards for determining whether a project has probable and significant adverse environmental impacts, right? And so the city really needs to take into account, if you look in the second column, that whether, and then this is where I'm applying it kind of to the project itself, they have to have more than moderate average, there's a reasonable likelihood of impact. The project will have to have more than moderate adverse impact on the unquantifiable environmental amenities and values. So we will circle a little bit back to make sure that, the connection to what we heard from the first witness and the SEPA application to her concerns about the unquantifiable environmental amenities and values. And then the project is also going to have more than a moderate adverse impact due to its location. So,
and then Ms. Hunt, maybe I can save you some time. I'm well versed in the SEPA law.
okay,
So
all
if
right.
you can
And
get to
then for
how-
this one, but these are the ones we think are critical: the location, the multiple unknowns, and then just the direct, indirect, and other impacts. So thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure, I want to we're narrowing down into that. So next slide. Okay, so our brief was submitted, and it, I referenced the law from the beginning of the brief because we believe this case reflects the underlying belief that this has operated or functioned as a park. So we know it's not a park per se, although the trail signs do make the average person think it's a park, but it's functioned as a park. And you can see here, like the gravel trail is going through the trees. As we heard, there were hawks They're just, the other day when we were over there, there's songbirds. So this is functioning for the people in the neighborhood as a park. And we want to ensure that the city is mitigating for that function in whatever mitigation they design. So am I speaking to what, am I addressing things the way?
Yeah,
I hear.
I understand the
Okay.
background law. I guess
Okay.
what I want to get to is
Sure.
how this project did not. did
Well,
or
the
did not-
mitigation, what we're saying, what we're leading to is the mitigation does not does not function as a part, as, it doesn't replace the function that the law, that the land is serving now.
I hear your point.
Okay, so they provided evidence of that with the signs. And so any reasonable person would consider, if you go to the next page, that this is a park and the mitigation, you know, we have concerns about the mitigation for that. So you can go to the next slide. So we need data-driven decisions, and the SEPA checklist just ignored the function of the park. And they did not collect any data on the park users. They did not collect any data on how people feel about what type of replacement they want. There is absolutely no data, which leaves the developer in the city free to design whatever mitigation they want without taking in the impact of the stakeholders. So we know that SEPA law demands authentic efforts to collect and analyze relevant data to allow appropriate environmental considerations in the city's decision, and that has to be alongside and not subjugated to the economic and the technical considerations. And so that's what we were hearing from the other people who all live under the flight path and use this park to escape the noise, they escape the air quality issues, and with climate change, the increasing the heat domes, this is their escape. And the city has not shown how it's going to mitigate that with the removal of 500 trees. All right, next slide.
And I'm going to ask you again, if Ms.
Yes?
Rousseau, you could ask some questions to get some factual testimony from this witness.
Well-
Because this is sounding like legal argument.
Okay, well, I mean, the legal,
I'm asking if Ms. Russo can
Sure.
ask you some questions.
thank you,
So
I will,
Let's await a question and then,
right.
Sandy, do you mind giving a brief description as to why the significance of the flight path is going to affect everybody, as well as the neighborhoods and the habitat around?
Sure, the plans for the mitigation, which you can see, this is an overlay of our testimony or evidence from A6 combined with map A46. So this design now is situated, and you can see exactly where that is. So so the agencies need to be talking to the people where this is going to be sited, because this used to be a residentially zoned area and it has served as a buffer. And the people that are living in those houses are losing that buffer between, that is right now keeping the noise down and keeping the air quality better and keeping the heat index down.
and I think you can move your mic just a little bit.
Sorry. All
Ms.
right,
Russo,
next slide.
Do you have, I'm just, you need to be responsive to a question.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, and do you, what would the location of the development mean in matters to the codes?
Well, the location of the mitigation and the development, you can see on this map. So the mitigation is on the other side away from the houses. So that mitigation doesn't really provide mitigation for the people who are going to be most impacted by the loss of the trees. Okay?
Russo?
And do you mind expanding a little bit and telling us why the stormwater management is going to be an issue?
Sure. So, and I don't want to repeat because you heard a little bit from Lloyd. So it's just when they are rerouting the stream Y into stream, part of it is being rerouted into stream Z. That is adding even more water. So I'll just add to his testimony, adding even more water to the section of the development in that corner than they even have right now. Okay, next slide.
Or Mr. Allen, response to
Okay,
questions. at this
thank
point.
you.
Thank you.
What are the locations of significant and why do they matter?
Sure. There are 8 locations of significance in this area. And so when we're moving now into not just applying like, how do we make sure that everybody's been informed, but now we're moving into the idea that location matters, which has been brought up by a number of people. So there are 8 points of there's 8 issues around location that I want to make sure that you're aware of, right? So the first is under the flight path. So we've been hearing about that and that there's no data that's been collected on the noise, the air quality, or the noise, the air quality, or the heat. So that is critical to making a determination as to whether the mitigation is really going to meet the needs of the people that live near there and use the park. The second point of location is the residential neighborhoods, which is, I've already mentioned that, and you've heard a lot about that already. So I don't know if I have anything more to add to that, but an EIS would be highly beneficial to planning for the air and noise impacts that this development's going to have on the lives and the health of the families adjacent and near the west property line in particular, but also, for example, where the appellant lives across the street. Okay, next, the third location that's really significant and where EIS would be valuable is the Washington Priority Habitats and Species. So that area is up in the northeast corner of the map. And if you want to go ahead to slide number, keep it going ahead a couple more, that was, okay, just, oh, sorry, go back. Back to number 3. I'm on number 3. So there you go. So we did number 1 was the flight path. Number 2 was the residences. So number 3. So I know that there were 2 reports plus somebody that the city hired, which indicated that yes, this potentially is in the Washington Priority Habitats and Species area, particularly that corner. But it doesn't really count because the area's been degraded because we've let it get overrun. And that's not the intent of the Washington, that particular act. From the state perspective, they want to be creating corridors for animals and birds and, species that can connect from north to south. So we heard that from Kathy's testimony, so I won't go into that, but an EIS for this property, from that perspective, would provide useful information for supporting a key local animal movement corridor and the restoration efforts that we've heard a number of people that are involved in that have given testimony already. Okay, so next slide. So number 4. Okay, so number 4, the location of number 4 is the erosion and landslide hazard area that we heard from our previous witness. So an EIS would help supply important information about erosion and the potential impact of clear cutting and removing all the vegetation. Because when they go in here, when you look at this big rectangle, like everything is just stripped out. And I know that they're talking about putting erosion controls in there during construction, but a real big problem is that they did not do a surveying really from, I know it's from the edge of the property downward, but what they're going to do is going to affect the edge of the property. What they do on the property downward, it's going to impact that. And so an EIS would help supply the important information about erosion and the potential impact of clear cutting, removing that vegetation bank, which starts really just 40 feet off as we went out there. But yeah, hello, we're not surveyors, I'll admit that. But the survey information was not, we could not find the real cartographic survey information, and that's what we're advocating for this EIS. Okay, next is number 5. Okay, so number 5 is the stormwater management systems that were put in place for the previous phases of the development. And I did try to get the EIS to really understand how they're mitigating the erosion off of there. And so I think, you know, without the EIS, the city will have be missing critical information, I think, to achieve a better mitigation plan for the stormwater and the water, because this is, you know, these piecemeal developments that all these developers are doing, not just here, but around the United States, slide under some of the SEPA issues because they just have this one little square and this one little rectangle, this one little building. And so by piecemealing this, we end up with, I won't use a swear word, but not very good mitigation systems for a whole piece of property that the water doesn't really, you know, think is, the water is going to flow where the water is going to flow. And if you walk out there, and what an EIS would do would help us look at the failure of the systems that you see by walking the land right now. And so then they would need to take into account the failures of the systems that are happening out there when they design and update the mitigation for this piece of the land and make sure that they're integrated. And so in reading all their plans, I did not see a great deal of integration between the stormwater and water management systems that they're putting in place between what they did with the developments for phase 1 and 2, and now 3 and 4, you know, whatever number we're on, sorry. But that's why this location really matters when you look to the east and what's been done on the property there before. Okay, the next slide, please. Okay, this is number 6. And all right, so number 6 is a little tricky because it's the stormwater, I'm sorry, it's the, let me get the, sorry, I know we're kind of in a hurry. It's the well protection area. I'm sorry if that's not the exact term. So the hydrogeologist, you have and I have the page number here from the testimony. A hydrogeologist on page A63 of our testimony is a letter dated and submitted to the city on behalf of Water District 54 during the SEPA comment period. And it was in response to the city issuing its determination. So I just want to direct you to that page and make sure that you look at it. Great, because, and I went to their board meeting and talked to them. So that's one of the preparations I did.
And I'm providing you with a lot of leeway, but
Okay.
we need to
So,
focus in.
so an EIS would be critical to answering the questions of the Water District Board, because they had them there, and the city, at the point that I talked to them, said the city had not talked to them. So the other 2 letters in our testimony, the wetland biologist, A31, is a letter dated and submitted during the SEPA comment period as well. And then related, because in the same department, is a letter that's dated from a habitat biologist, and that's private discoverable email from an employee of the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, his working account, and sent to Kathy actually here. And so he is clearly concerned about the loss of function we have received information that the Department of Ecology does not feel that their water mitigation system is going to work. So even if the permit is permitted, they're going to have to do a lot more
I'm losing
work.
track a little bit.
So
What-
we're talking about
but-
6 is the wells, we need a EIS to really answer the questions of the water district and to deal with the complex interplay between the variance that needs to be done, the stormwater, the water, the totally rebuilding of almost a lot of the wetlands. And so an EIS would actually help provide a much more over holistic approach that takes into account the needs of all the stakeholders. That includes the water that's under the ground in their aquifer, that could affect their aquifer, as well as the stormwater that's on the side. All right, almost there. Number 7. Number 7 is what we've heard already about the impacts on the salmon bearing creek. So I will skip that, but an EIS would really deal with the issues that have been raised, not only by Lloyd, but also the people have been writing in about their concerns about how this project's going to affect a very sensitive stream. And then number 8, oops, and maybe that slide didn't get it. Number 8, thank you. Number 8 is also what we've heard is that this is a critical piece of the connector trail, and the EIS would help us really understand how our citizens are using this space, how the importance of it to them. And so each of these locations, if you go to the next slide, combines together to really help us understand for a very overburdened community, which you already heard because of the airport and because of the other buildings that they've already built for them. The city must be taking into account all of these things. And I hate to use the word
I think
cumulatively,
we're
but we
getting
do.
beyond the scope of the question that was
Okay.
asked. So let's go back
So-
to Ms. Rousseau and see if she's got
All
another
right.
question for you.
Sandy, how will the SEPA measures impact our citizens?
Well, the SEPA will allow citizens, if we do the full IS, to really give the authentic input that this project deserves. This is a unique project that requires much more impact compared to the other phases of development that were done previously.
Any other questions, Ms. Rousseau?
Just one more. And what are going to be the impacts due to the multiple unknowns? What do you think?
Well, I think what's interesting is SEPA, okay, so SEPA rules indicate that, okay,
Restate that question.
All
I'm
right.
a little bit
Yeah.
confused.
I'm just wondering, what do you think the impacts will be for the multiple unknowns? Sorry.
I mean, I think that's the problem.
Rogers?
I'm sorry,
What?
again, the multiple what? What's the question? We don't understand the
Yeah,
question, so I don't know
I'm
what
a
to
little
reject.
confused. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Thank you.
Is that all your questions? Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. George, do you have any questions of this witness?
No, Your Honor.
Rogers?
No, sir.
Thank you. You're excused. Ms. Rousseau, that concludes your witnesses?
Yes, that is it for us. Thank
Okay,
you.
well, I think at this point, it'll probably be a good time to take a little break before we see if the applicant and city have any witnesses they want to call. So let's go ahead and come back right around noon. Back on. Great, we're back on the record. I think we should now turn to, I know in my pre-hearing order, I had the applicant witnesses next, but you can choose if you want to allow the city to go.
I will ask for the city to
Okay.
go first, but I also had a procedural question first.
Sure.
The hearing was set from 10 to 2. Is 2 a hard stop deadline, or do we have more time?
My
Because if we're ending
understanding
at
is
2,
my understanding is we have the room as long as we, I didn't realize the notice.
Yeah, the city's available.
Great. Mr. George, do you have any witnesses that you would like to call?
No, Your Honor.
Ms.
I also
Rogers?
do not have witnesses to call.
Great, thank you. So that will, well, normally at this point in the hearing, I allow the parties to give oral closing statements rather. It would be my preference in the interest of time that any closing statements be provided in writing, but I want to get your thoughts on that.
I would be happy to do that.
Great.
Probably need a couple of weeks at least. To have
Yeah,
the
I'll get to
time
the
make that
time,
happen,
I'll
but
get to
yeah.
the time frame right after that.
That's great.
Okay, Ms. Rousseau?
That's fine, thank you.
Great. And then how long do the parties think they need to submit written closings?
I think a week is sufficient for everybody.
Just based on my other hearings and obligations, I definitely need at least 2 weeks.
Okay, I understand that too. My calendar's pretty full.
2 weeks would work for the
2
city.
weeks. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll leave the record open until, I believe is that November 1st?
Correct.
Till the end of the day, November 1st, to submit any written closing statements. If you could please limit those to 15 double-spaced pages, and please don't add any additional exhibits. It's not there's not going to be a response to any closing statements. It's
Just real quickly, you said 15?
15 double-spaced pages, yeah, and please don't add any attachments. You can refer to the exhibits that were already admitted. You can just cite those. So next, then, we will turn to the permit application portion of our hearing today. My role for this portion of the hearing will be, again, to collect evidence in the form of exhibits and testimony, but now to determine whether the applicant's proposal complies with the city comprehensive plan and the specific criteria for approval of a master plan and variance from certain requirements of the city's critical areas ordinance. To that end, I received and reviewed several exhibits in advance of the hearing, which include the exhibits that I previously admitted into the record during the SEPA appeal portion of the hearing. Should anyone have any additional exhibits that you would like admitted into the record, just please let me know when it's your opportunity to testify, and I will address admitting additional exhibits at that time. The order that we typically follow, and I believe we're going to be following today, is first we'll hear from city staff, who will provide an overview of the proposal, along with any recommendations that the city may have. Following that, we'll hear from the applicant and see if there's any additional information they feel that myself or members of the public should be aware of in advance of my recommendation being issued. And then after that, members of the public will have an opportunity to testify. And finally, following any public testimony, we'll turn back to the applicant and city as necessary for any response. So who do we have presenting on behalf of the city today? Yeah. Let's go ahead and get you sworn in. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
Yes, I do.
Great. And can you please state and spell your name for the record and explain your role with the city?
My name is Jason Wyke, Senior Planner at the City of Des Moines, spelled JASONWOYCKE.
Thank you, Mr. Wyke. You can begin your presentation whenever you're ready.
Good morning or afternoon. My name is Jason Wyke, and I am the Senior Planner here at the City of Des Moines. The applicant seeks approval of a master plan and Title 16 Des Moines Municipal Code, or DMMC for short, variance for the Des Moines Creek Business Park West development. We'll call that Business Park West for short. The proposed development will be a culmination of over 20 years of City of Des Moines and Port of Seattle efforts to develop the area into a thriving business park with a mix of light industrial and commercial activities. Approval of the request would allow for the construction of an approximately 402,000 square foot light industrial building associated with associated site improvements, including approximately 381 parking stalls, separate truck and automobile driveways, and a new and improved trail, while also enhancing the site's environmentally critical areas as shown in Exhibit C4, Master Site Plan. Some of the light industrial uses that could be allowed in this building could be baking, cabinet making, machining, distribution center. Those are some of the permitted uses. Per chapter 18105 DMMC, master plan approval is a requirement of the business park zone. Purpose of a master plan is to define the development of property, promote compatibility with neighboring areas, and benefit the community with flexibility and innovation. Staff review of the application determined that a Title 16 DMMC variance is also required. The variance is required because the applicants propose to fill a ravine and realign a stream. The subject ravine and associated stream, Stream Y in Exhibit C2, are located at the center of the site at the location of the proposed building and parking lot. The city reviewed the applications and determined that the proposal does meet the DMMC 18105.050 decision criteria for master plan approval and the DMMC's 1835070 decision criteria for variance approval. The city's analysis of each of the criteria are included in the staff report, Exhibit C1. The proposal is also consistent with the goals, policies, and implementation strategies of the city's comprehensive plan, as well as the environmental regulations of Title 16 DMMC. City staff recommend that the hearing examiner approve this master plan in Title 16 DMMC variance. The application meets the criteria provided in the code, in the municipal code. Therefore, the request for this master plan and variance should be approved by the hearing examiner. The city does have a number of recommended conditions of approval that I could go into at this time, but I don't know.
I don't think that's necessary at this time. Thank you. Well, I do want to thank you for your very thorough staff report. I do feel like I have a good understanding of this proposal and the applicable review criteria. I do have a few questions for you, and I'm going to try to keep this brief so that we can get to the public comment portion of today's hearing. And then, Ms. Rogers, you can feel free to chime in with any clarifications to my questions. So first, can you just confirm the information I provided at the start of the hearing regarding the change of location and whether there was notice provided at the first location? And someone available to direct people here. I just want to make sure that that's.
That is correct.
Great, thank you. And let me see my notes here. So my understanding is that this subject property is located in the business park zone where light industrial uses are permitted outright, subject to certain limitations. But master plan approval is required for all development in that zone. And that's one of the reasons why we're here today.
Correct.
Thank you. And I believe that's normally something that's reviewed by city council, but they've delegated that authority to the hearing examiner. Is that a correct understanding?
I'm trying to remember whether or not it was the variance. Is it the variance?
I'm speaking about the master plan approval.
Your Honor, if I may.
Yes.
Yes, the master plan approval was delegated by the city council through a resolution that was passed at a council meeting.
I did see that. So I just want to be clear on my role. I will be issuing a final decision on the master plan application, not some sort of recommendation to city council or something that could be appealed to city council through an administrative process. Am I?
That you're correct. You're essentially standing in the role of city
Okay,
council.
I just want to make sure. that I understand correctly. And then, as noted in your staff report, this proposal also requires a variance from critical area requirements due to, I believe, ravine sidewalls that are going to remain following the realignment of Stream Y. Am I understanding that correct? That's what the variance is for.
For the filling of the ravine sidewalls.
Yeah.
Or the ravine.
But my understanding is that a variance is not required for the proposed development within wetlands and wetland buffers, because in the city's view, the proposal would comply with applicable wetland development requirements.
That's correct. As proposed, that's correct.
I'm sorry for all these technical questions, but it's really important for me in issuing my decision that I'm understanding that. And then, let's see. And then my understanding with regard to the wetlands, there's four wetlands on site. Wetland A is a category 4 wetland that's going to be filled, but it's not subject to any local regulations due to its size.
I don't have my materials with me
Okay.
right down there, but I believe that is correct.
And then I don't know if it'll be helpful, maybe if we can put up, do you know a good exhibit that can kind of show the layout of the site?
The critical areas map, I believe that's C2. Probably, yeah.
Do we have an exhibit that shows the existing
Down,
conditions?
yeah, down few pages. There we go. You'll have to zoom out. Maybe a little, maybe not. Might not be necessary, but if you go down a little bit more. Yeah. I believe wetland, okay.
I don't know if you can rotate that. I know, I believe north is this way on. the,
Correct, yes.
There we go. I think that's it. Okay. So wetland A is that small wetland that's kind of at
I
the
believe so.
frontage of the property, and that's going to be filled, correct? And then up, let's see, we have wetland B. Can you, and that's also a category 4 wetland. Can you show us where that is? That's the other small one that's kind of off to the,
Tara, would you zoom in a little bit?
just want to make sure I understand the conditions. of
Yeah,
the
it's that one
property.
right there.
Yeah, and there's no proposed impacts to that wetland from this development? Is that correct?
I'd have to review.
And we can, when we get to the applicant too, they can provide clarification. Just trying to understand the proposal. And then we have wetland C, and I think that's the large one kind of in the center, and that's proposed to be partially filled. And then wetland D is up there in the corner, and that's a category.
I think if you scroll up, you can see D better.
And
Yeah.
then I think it's my understanding that there's some buffer averaging that's proposed for that wetland. Is that correct? Okay, I just want to, I'm just trying to make sure I have all that straight in my mind. Okay. And then I believe the applicant submitted a conceptual mitigation plan that actually determined the proposed mitigation would provide a net lift in ecological functions and values.
Correct.
Is that correct? And then the city had a third-party expert review that plan. And then my understanding is that after several revisions, the third party ultimately agreed that the proposal would meet all applicable mitigation.
Yes, our expert environmental consultants, one of which is here, did review it and approved of the proposal.
Great, thank you. I don't have any additional questions for you at this time. Are there any other members of city staff that want to testify on this matter?
I don't think so.
I asked one, clarify.
Sure, yeah.
And Mr. Orthy, I just wanted to confirm that turning to the variance, variance again is tied to filling within those ravine sidewalls and is independent of the relocation of the stream. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Relocation of the stream is separate.
True.
Thank you for that clarification. Ms. Rogers, is there anyone from the applicant team that wishes to present additional information on this proposal at this time?
Would you like to hear from our wetlands expert in response to your questions, or did you get those satisfactorily answered?
I'm aware of those issues. I didn't know if the members of the public here today, if you wanted to present any additional information. There were some concerns raised in written comments. You can respond to those after the public has an
Yeah.
opportunity to.
Let's
testify
just,
if you want.
I'll hold that for later and just limit our opening presentation to say that we are here in full support of the staff report, its recommendation, and the recommended conditions of approval, and are here to ask master plan and
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to now turn to the public testimony portion of the hearing. Thank you, Mr. Wyke. Before we begin, I just want to stress again that I did read all of the written comments that have been submitted to me so far, other than those I received today again. So I am well aware of the concerns that have been expressed about this proposal. I understand that there are strong and opposing views about this development, but I do want to ensure that this is a civil forum, so I would just please ask that you express your views in a respectful manner. And I do believe we have several members of the public that want to testify on this, so I'm just going to please ask that you limit your comments to around 3 minutes so that we can get to everyone. I'm not going to set a hard timer, but if you're getting close to that time, I just may ask you to wrap things up. Do we have the sign-in sheet? I want to begin with the people that are present here, and then turn to people that are participating via remote technology. And then I do want to note, this is not an opportunity for back and forth questions, but if you have any questions, I will jot them down. I would ask that the city and the applicant jot those down, and then maybe we can get some answers to your questions after we conclude the public comment. Yeah, I'll go down the list. And so I have a list of the people who signed in here. I'm just going to kind of go down the list. And if you would like to, if you'd like to present any comments, you can come up and I'll swear you in. So I have, I believe, Sandra Hunt. You can make a public comment, yes. I'll recognize any of the comments that you made during the SEPA appeal, so there's no need to repeat those. But if you have any additional comments that you can please try to limit to 3 minutes, you're welcome. Oh, I guess we're going to utilize the podium. And you're still sworn in, so you can just begin your comments.
All
when
right,
you're ready.
thank you.
Thank you.
I'll try not to eat the microphone this time. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, I am the former president of the Highline Education Association, which means I really took to heart that role in terms of not only looking out for the best interests of the staff, my members, but also the community. And I was president during COVID, so I had the opportunity to learn a lot. And some of that I brought forward today in my testimony, particularly around air quality. And that's where I got involved with the Defenders of Highline, which at the time was Defenders of North Sea-Tac Park, and have morphed into the Defenders of Highline Forest. We believe that air quality is a critical issue for this part of our state. And we've been advocating actively and are excited, for example, with the new HEAL Act. So we brought the HEAL Act into our exhibits and we're told, well, that doesn't really apply to the city, maybe yet, we're still working on that. It's really something that would apply to the Department of Ecology and other departments. But I think the intent of the HEAL Act and what Barbara was getting at is that this is an overburdened community. in the whole state, 1 through 10. You know, we're numbered 9 or 10. And my kids, my students, my staff are working in that environment. And then in this case, the families are living exactly next door. And so that buffer through the decisions that the city had made is now gone for the people living directly in there, but then the overall tree canopy. We are moving into the SAMP plan where we know that more and more impacts on air quality are going to be happening. And so when we lose these trees, I think a lot of things can be mitigated on the site. But when we lose these trees, it is going to be 20 years to get that mitigation back. And so the footprint of this building is way too big. It is like when I glued it into that spot, it's bigger than the other warehouses around. There's no reason, except for everybody wants their stuff sent to their house within a day, that we're building that large of warehouse in the backyards of an overbuilding burden community that have air quality issues, noise issues that have not even been addressed whatsoever through the studies that have been done by this. This is too early to permit. This is not ready to be permitted. We do not have all the information we need to make sure that people's lives, their health, their property values, all kinds of things are addressed through this project. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next on the list, I have Kathy McDonald.
One more time. All right,
You can proceed, you're still.
Yeah, I'm Kath McDonald, and not a witness now. I'm a resident, and I have an engineering degree, and I have been a leader in technology since the early '80s. And I know any sound decision requires data. The applicant and the city haven't gathered the full data set thoroughly to analyze this decision. I think it's premature to grant permitting at this time. Talking to many people over the summer, I have not found one that thinks this is a good idea. We're already living among noise and pollutants caused by the airport, and removing our protective tree canopy is jeopardizing our personal health and our environment. I also learned that through this, I've learned how bad it is where I'm living. I did not know that, how bad it was to live under the airport. And I have concerns about that, and I've spoke to my husband about that. Sometimes knowledge is scary, but living on the flight path. Getting port package windows to block the noise is not enough when you know all these pollutants are coming down now. I grow a big garden, and I'm eating the vegetables in there. Now I'm concerned, is that even healthy? There's no benefit to the citizens of Des Moines for this development. It's only negative impact. If the project goes forward, then the airport is in a land grab. They've already gotten 135 acres just next to this development. And now you're adding 30 more. And they also propose they're going for more around SCORE. They have a lot of land earmarked right now that is forested land. I own a property over by where they're building the other warehouses where 509 is, and I've seen the whole woods behind my property go down. The port has plans for both 509 and all these warehouses to really increase and speed up the logistics of the airport, to cram in more flights. What does more flights mean? More flights means more pollutants. And I have a concern about that. So please, I propose deny this permit until more data can be thoroughly analyzed. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Next, I have Len, sorry if I'm saying this wrong, it's Syke. Oh, okay, great. Carolyn Decker. Okay, thank you. Shelley Wenger. Okay, thank you. Rick Harwood. Let me get you sworn in.
Okay,
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
Thank you.
My name is Rick Harwood. I'm also a retired educator who worked in the Highline School District for 10 years. From 2005 to 2015, I was principal at one of the small schools on the Tye High School campus during that time, and became very closely connected with the residents, students and their families who attended my school and live in the community that's directly impacted by the airport. And not just, well, they're impacted in terms of health conditions, ability to learn, ability to breathe fresh air and recreate in healthy and safe environments, and have been, ever since retirement, continuing to work as a member of the Rotary Club of Sea-Tac Tukwila and as a member of Defenders of Highline Forest to try to continue to preserve and protect the natural environment. We did a lot of work lobbying the Port Commission and lobbying Congressman Smith to change the FAA Authorization Act to include the ability for local community or local airports to transfer property or sell property at below market rate, which is now the current law under the recently passed FAA Authorization Act, so that North Sea-Tac Park could be preserved as an environmentally sound area to recreate, and also for tree canopy and water resources like the bog that's Tub Lake. And we feel like this development here will have the same potentially negative impact on the community if it's allowed to be developed for more warehouses and destroy the natural environment and take down 500 trees and detract from the tree canopy. This area that surrounds the airport has a 27% tree canopy cover. That's the lowest tree canopy in any region in the state of Washington. And so what currently exists needs to be preserved and enhanced, not destroyed, just for the sake of building another cargo warehouse, when there are cargo warehouses right on that same property that have vacant space that could be used for business development and economic development without building another warehouse, without just cutting down more trees and taking away areas that the immediate neighborhood recreates and uses, as have been described by the people who testified earlier today. So I strongly encourage at least delaying until an environmental impact statement can be done that really adequately assesses the impact of this development on the health and environment of the community. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I have Aram Falsafi, if I'm saying that correct. Yeah, that's fine. I'm just going to go down the list and you just let me know if you want to provide comments or not. Thank you. Patty Clayton, thank you for being here today. Mike Pekowicz, was I even close there? Piaski, thank you. I will be asking you to spell your name for the record. Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And can you please spell your name for the record?
Michael, Michael, last name Piaski, P as in Paul, Iechowski.
Thank you. You
So
can provide any comments you want.
the hydrogeologist for Water District 54. I've also worked with a number of the other water districts in the area. And one of the things I saw that was somewhat lacking in the work I've reviewed to date on this project is any mention of the fact that 50% of this property is covered by wellhead protection areas. So wellhead protection areas are there to protect the groundwater from impacts because it's easier to keep the water clean than it is to try to clean it up. So the fact that neither Water District 54 nor Highline Water District's wellhead protection areas were given any consideration is kind of interesting. Wellhead protection continues on beyond development. Property use would also be something that would have to be considered within a wellhead protection. They've mentioned machining. Well, machine shops use cutting fluids and lubricants that may contain substances that would degrade groundwater if it were released into the environment. So that'd be a concern. You know, it's just the kind of land use that we're talking about in future use of the facility. These are concerns that Water District 54 would like to see at least considered. It might be a big non-issue. Maybe things can be handled through operational controls and institutional controls and proper implementation and operation of the facility. We don't know. We haven't been engaged. So I just wanted to come today and point that out and offer my expertise as, one of the guys that draws the wellhead protection areas to add to the dialogue if it's necessary. Thanks.
Thank you for being here. Lloyd Little,
Thank you, Your Honor.
thank you. You're still under oath.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would like to testify on how the current development is a direct violation of Des Moines' comprehensive plan in a number of areas. The first one I'll just read. LU 1.6, preserve open spaces where appropriate to protect environmentally critical areas and shorelines, protect endangered and threatened species, provide visual separation between different land uses, neighborhoods, and city boundaries, and moderate the environmental and visual impacts of the new development. And Ms. Keen, may I go back to my slides real quick? To the very end, there's I have the actual printout from the Des Moines Stormwater Comprehensive Plan I'd like to show.
That's fine if we can keep it to the 3 minutes.
Absolutely.
Use your
Thank you,
time
Your
how
Honor.
want.
And while Ms. Keen is pulling that up, I'm connecting this to how the development impacts potential overflows into the Des Moines Creek, which is a salmon-bearing creek and which orca depend on, the southern resident orcas, which swim right next to our marina here. Their main diet is salmon. And so if you degrade the salmon, you're going to threaten endangered species, which we have. They lost 2 calves in the last year. Okay, may you keep going, please, Ms. King? It's toward the very end. Let's see if we can keep going. It'll say Des Moines. It's right after the riparian. Oh, here we go. So 2021 mid-plan update. 1, low impact development code. Permittees shall continue to require LID principles and BMPs when updating, revising, and developing new local codes, et cetera. And I believe this is definitely a high impact development. It's clear that you're replacing wetlands, you're taking out trees, you're potentially degrading a salmon-bearing creek. So very high impact indeed. Next slide, please, Ms. Gann. Comprehensive stormwater planning requires update and create land use planning and development policies that address receiving water needs, including development policy and regulations. Must consider land use and how the landscape is developed at a scale broader, and I want to emphasize the term broader, than individual site, which is the current development, and subdivision projects. So the city of Des Moines requires that we look at the surrounding area. And second, look for opportunities to integrate land use planning, moving forward to proactively integrate stormwater management and water resource protection into growth management and land use planning. And growth management goes back to Washington state guidelines and laws. So this is my proof and evidence that the surrounding area must be considered. And in addition to Mr. Piotski's comments, I believe the current new wetlands retaining pond they want to develop, they want to go even deeper. So they're really going to have to disturb that land and go deep. And that could get into those drinking water areas because you're going to have to get way in there. And then you have this huge parking lot, warehouse area where the pollutants are going to concentrate in that area. And that could affect the groundwater too. So you're affecting humans too. And so for these reasons, I believe there are 4 or 5 good reasons that this permit should be denied at this point. There should be an EIS and further mitigation, or maybe just kept as is. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Would you like your slide presentation admitted as an exhibit for this portion of this hearing?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is that something you can
Thank you.
forward to
Thank
my
you so much.
office when you have a chance? Thank you.
Thank you.
And our designations are a little strange, but I'll designate it something.
Oh, thank you, Your
for
Honor.
being here.
Appreciate it.
J.C. Harris? He left, okay. Barbara McMichael? She left too, okay. Richard Burley? Thank you for being here today. Linda McKillop? And Ms. Russo, would you like to provide comments? Let me get you sworn in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me transition from everything I was doing to this as a citizen. I am asking in my heart of hearts at this point, that you really hear us. As a city, the city wants us to start gaining their trust as citizens and their loyalty. I know this is you as this, but I'm also kind of referring to the city as well if possible. Please hear us. Listen to us crying out. We are wishing that you would stop the destruction and the breaking down of our green space, our wetlands, and the trees. Realize that the extra noise pollution, the air pollution, and the wetland pollution is going to be big. The pollutions are going to affect us as a community, and that is why we are here. The city has asked citizens in a survey what they wanted. The number one was preserving our green space. That is why we are here. The SEPA codes are not fully correct, as we have pointed out. Excuse me. And did they miss the extinct wildlife that we have in there? Did they miss the salmon? You know, just a few things. I am asking that you hear us, that as a community, we are saying, give us our green space and preserve it. You want to hear us, please do. Listen to the actions that the 999 petition signs that we got were done. And please give us more time. Give us the EIS. Give us what we are asking. As a citizen, tearing apart this trail is a big thing for us. It gives us that peace. It gives us that, like they said, I live directly across from what will be a warehouse possibly. And seeing the planes within a rock throw of my apartment door and not having those trees to help keep the noise and the pollutions down are going to affect us. Please hear us. I understand that you're going to look at the laws and you're going to do all that and all of this, but please hear us as citizens as well. We're asking that you deny this permit today and hear us as citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Eileen sorry, I can't read it. You want me to come back to you? I'm gonna get through everyone in the room and then I'll circle back. All right. Nancy Core. Linda Holtham. Claire Parfit. We'll go ahead and get you sworn in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
And can you just please spell your name for the record?
CLAREPARFITT.
Thank you.
I am almost 20-year resident of Des Moines. I'm a avid hiker, biker on the trails. I use the trails several times a week. I actually even ski on them when we have snow. I'm a avid mountaineer, hiker. The environment is my passion, and I believe it's our duty as citizens in this era of climate change to preserve remaining green space when it doesn't have to be developed. I think this warehouse, just the very idea of this warehouse in this location is morally reprehensible. And we have a duty as stewards of the environment. The city, the port has a duty to listen to citizens of Des Moines that are going to be impacted by this. We have a duty, they have a duty to preserve green space when it's appropriate. The scale of this project is absolutely monstrous. 403,000 square feet, 400 parking spaces, 68 trailer parking spaces, and an estimated 838 trips a day with trucks and traffic. With the accompanying exponential increase in pollution and noise, The city did a terrible job of informing residents about this development, and the city needs to listen to us and provide more transparency, more communication. I'm also a local business owner, and I was a volunteer among the core group of people who spoke at the hearing, who collectively spent hundreds and hundreds of volunteer hours and many late nights to fight this development. I compiled the 300-page evidence document, including having an all-nighter, hundreds of documents I compiled with all the studies and letters and environmental studies, so I'm fairly well-versed in the issues involved. First of all, the city only sent notices to 220 residents. They didn't even send notices to people on 14th Avenue South that are directly very close to the proposed development. The city has a population as of 2022 of 32,408 people. Many of those people use the trail and appreciate the green space, want to have a high quality of life in this community, much more than the 220 people that were contacted. As mentioned, the signage was only placed on 216th. There was no signage about the project on the 15th Avenue South Trail or the Martins Creek Trail, nor the trailhead at the Des Moines Beach Park. These residents were contacted, 220 were mailed given notices. They were given an appalling 3 days notice to attend a virtual hearing, which is not sufficiently adequate, respectful of engaging the citizens in this town. The poor, unfortunate people need to be respected who live on 15th Avenue South. They have dramatically lowered property values. They have green space in their backyard, including one gentleman who moved here specifically in July of this year from Linwood because he wanted to have a green space in his backyard. He was not aware whatsoever of this proposed warehouse. So he's stunned and shocked and appalled that this is happening. There's no plan to compensate the residents on 15th Avenue South, who will have now dramatically lowered home values. The city of Des Moines was listed as an overburdened community by the state with associated air pollution, as has been mentioned, of level 9 or 10, the highest in the state. Excessive noise, extreme air pollution has been linked to much higher rates of cancer, asthma, especially in children and the elderly. As we saw through Barbara McMichael's impassioned testimony, she has cancer. She said one street from her, everybody has cancer. We can't neglect the issue of air pollution, which is not sufficiently addressed whatsoever in this mitigation. The applicant is proposing wetlands mitigation, which has not been approved by the State Department of Ecology. It's still viewed as conceptual. The Department of Ecology has said that their mitigation plan may differ in potentially substantive ways from the developer's mitigation plan. The Des Moines Creek has also listed as the state as a terrestrial habitats and green space corridor. I would like to read section from the Des Moines Municipal Code 16.05.310. The city shall use all practicable means to A1, fulfill the responsibilities of each generation as trustee of the environment for succeeding generations, and A2, assure for all people of the state safe, healthful, productive, and aesthetically and cultural pleasing surroundings. And A3, attain the widest range of beneficial uses of the environment without degradation, risk to health or safety, or other undesirable and unintended consequences. E, it is the city's policy to protect its residents and businesses from the long-term consequences of successive incremental negative environmental impacts associated with a specific proposal or its connected actions. Accordingly, the city may condition or deny proposals in order to mitigate or prevent such long-term impacts. We've clearly shown that long-term impacts include extreme pollution to exposure to airplane pollution and noise, which there's no mitigation for this. F, unusual circumstances related to a site or proposal and significant adverse environmental impacts not capable of adequate mitigation may be cause of denial for a proposal. The State HEAL Act, short for Healthy Environment for All Act, developed in 2021, states the law requires state agencies to address environmental health disparities in overburdened communities and for vulnerable populations. As I mentioned before, Des Moines is listed by the state as an overburdened community. We must make sure no community is overburdened by environmental pollution and that we strive to eliminate environmental and health disparities. There's an obvious disparity in health outcomes for people that live under the flight path in this overburdened city of Des Moines. Health disparity in respiratory illnesses, cancer, asthma, et cetera, and noise. The SEPA policy, or State Environmental Policy Act, says each generation is a trustee of the environment for succeeding generations. It is a continuing responsibility of the state to carry out that principle. I'd like to point out an issue about the.
I'm giving you, we're moving along pretty good, so I'm giving you a little extra time, but I just want to
Okay.
get an idea of how much.
I
longer you-
just, one more point I want to
Okay,
add.
great, thank you.
Okay, so as I mentioned, the applicant has a mitigation plan for the wetlands. There's no mitigation plan to allow for the destruction of the 500 trees and the associated increase in air pollution and noise. The applicant has maintained that the trees will be replaced at a 4-to-1 ratio. However, if you looked at the current business park, it's plainly obvious that there's not 4 times the number of trees planted in that location. So if these trees are replanted, where are they planted? Is that anywhere in the state or in the city? And if they're planted elsewhere, anywhere in the state, that does not allow sufficient mitigation for the air pollution and noise. And I'd like to see some data or documentation of the actual tree replacement policy that the port has actually instituted, the 4-to-1 tree replacement policy in other locations. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for being here. Nicole Malik? Sworn in? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
Yes,
Thank you. And can you please spell your name for the record?
NICOLEMALIK.
Thank you.
I didn't know what I was coming to today. I am a homeowner on 15th Avenue South, so I'm directly affected by it. My backyard is my sanctuary. I sit in the backyard, I feed the birds, and affiliated woodpeckers, northern flickers, owls have come into the yard. I have 5 grandchildren that I've taught them the species of birds. And when they come over the backyards, also we have a playground, trampoline. We do little nature hunts in the backyard. So this warehouse going up will not be a fun visual to look at and destroy what natural trees and plants are back there and replacing them with nursery bought trees and planted. Also, I'm worried about what the runoff would be into my backyard. It is at a slope and then it levels out. So I don't know what water would come off during heavy storms or rain, would come into my yard, erode it, possibly flood the house. So anyway, thank you. Very nervous. So
Thank you for being here. Oh boy, I'm going to butcher this. Catherine Barashkov? Oh, really? Did you want to provide comments today? Oh, well, we'll need you to come up here so we can get you on the recording. Okay, thank you for being here. Andrea O'Farrell? get you sworn in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. And can you please spell your name for the recording?
Andrea. O'Farrell, O''Ferrall.
Thank you.
I'm going to speak on thinking globally and acting locally. My general mood these days swings from hope to sorrow and back to hope as I see neighbors and activists here to defend the land, a wetland. Sorrow creeps in as I see that we as a people no longer hold life sacred. Globally, extreme weather and flooding are causing death and destruction in Florida, Southern Appalachia, Acapulco, and so on. No one is safe from the impacts of carbon pollution. We are failing to see the interconnectedness of the web of life, the havoc that consumerism is causing, and the death sentence of unbridled capitalism. When I was young, we chased lightning bugs across the yard at dusk. We have lost 75% of the global insect population in the last 50 years. My generation's grandchildren will likely not even know what a lightning bug is. Yet they will not grieve their absence. Generational drift is the term for the phenomena. As global changes in the world around us occur over time, they go unnoticed by individuals within a generation because they are so accustomed to the new normal, while the older generation perceives the loss. Perhaps this is why the loss of life due to endless growth doesn't feel real to so many. You cannot miss what you never knew. You cannot be alarmed at patterns you have experienced as normal. I am disheartened and grieving, yet I prefer that over numb or unaware. I still believe we can change our trajectory and build a just and abundant world beyond the climate and ecological crisis. So here I am to beg that you look beyond the short-term profit. It makes no sense to move a thriving wetland for more warehouse space. We can't continue with a capitalist profit model that devours the land and water we depend on to live healthy lives. So I obviously support an EIS.
Thank you for being here. And then I believe it's Tracy Buxton. No? Is there anyone in the room that wants to provide comments that I haven't called? We can get back to you, Eileen, if I don't see anybody else. Get you sworn in? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
Yes, I do.
Great. And can you just go ahead and spell your name for the record?
Eileen Lambert, Eileen, last name Lambert.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Eileen. I'm a Des Moines citizen, resident, community builder, also avid. I lead a birding group here called Des Moines Birders, and I'm also in the process of being hired to lead nature-based programming here in the city of Des Moines, of which I consider some of the best outdoor classroom possible. We live in a very beautiful, green, diverse area where we have streams, green spaces, we have the Puget Sound, we have all these beautiful habitats that are just ripe for bringing the community to learn more about them. So again, I've been in talks with the City of Des Moines Parks and Rec to start leading nature-based programming, of which I'm looking at areas such as the Des Moines Creek, such as these beautiful green spaces, such as these forests, these salmon-bearing creeks, which I have personally seen salmon spawning down and going to the Puget Sound. I have seen orca wells, from the Puget Sound near Des Moines. And I'm coming here today also speaking as a member of the Latinx community, which we have heard a bit about some of these impacted communities, the underrepresented communities who are, we are heavily burdened living here. I graduated from the Highline School District, Highline High School, as well as Highline College, and I've spent years living in this area now wondering about my life expectancy being
decreased because of all of this air pollution, all of the air quality, the sound issues, which they've been finding studies that are tied to our educational outcomes as well as students because of all the airplane noise. So I'm speaking here as a naturalist. I'm speaking here as a community builder who is leading communities that want to be more connected to nature, that want to yield the mental health benefits that being in uninterrupted, undeveloped green spaces provide. There's so much scientific data there, National Health Institute data that I've been researching about the very close evidence to support that our mental health actually is increased and has significant benefits by being out in nature, which you've heard many of our residents here speak to. The joy, the peace, all of those health benefits that we derive from being in these uninterrupted green spaces are trails that are more undeveloped trails, not paved trails, as they were in natural, parkland setting. I am worried as a resident who also lives in Des Moines that is literally under the flight path about my health outcomes, as well as those who cannot be here to speak for themselves because English is not their first language, such as the Latinx communities, such as those communities that were impacted, those that live within that 300 square foot zone around the proposed development, that they did not receive communication in a language that they could actually understand because none of the notices were in fact translated into Spanish. Myself personally, I translated notices into Spanish to actually get the word out to those communities because they're being left out. They're historically marginalized and they are not being part of this conversation that very much significantly impacts their life and their livelihoods. I also, Mayor Buxton is not in the room right now, but I was actually a guest at the South Sound Mayor's Forum on September 25th as a guest of Highline College, where I'm an alumni. Because they recognize myself as a Latinx leader and community builder, I was invited to be their special guest who was a sponsor of that event. And I will say I was absolutely appalled when I saw Mayor Buxton's presentation speaking to the City of Des Moines' accomplishments and what the plans are for the future, because it was very strongly highlighted this actual Des Moines Creek West development was one of those noted accomplishments of what we are working on for the future, as if it was a foregone conclusion, as if there wasn't appeal already scheduled on October 18th, that it was a done deal. And it literally made me so sick to my stomach sitting there. And that recording of that meeting is actually coming out today, and I will be receiving a recording of that. I think it was very disingenuous for her to present it as if it was a foregone conclusion that this development was approved. And I feel that approving this permit today would have so many detrimental negative outcomes for not just the citizens, not just for the wildlife, which I really haven't had a chance to talk about, that I'm very passionate about, but for our long-term health outcomes, for our life expectancy, for our peace of mind, for our mental health, for all of the people that have not just sat in this room, that are attending on Zoom, that have written letters, that we've received petition support from all around the world, in fact. But the fact that there is so much disingenuousness that this is like a done deal already, that why are we even here today if the mayor is already portraying it to the all of the mayors, to Burien, to Sea-Tac, to Tequila, that this is our shining example of economic prosperity, that we're going to be signing off on this deal because we need the money, let alone, and not even taking into consideration that we have a whole public appeal that the citizens actually fundraised. We crowdsourced $900 to be here today to file the appeal. I personally authored the appeal letter. I was very involved in that because I have a communications background. I also was a leader in the corporate tech world for 10 years. And I could not let that stand without adding my voice to this. So I stand here today as a citizen, as a naturalist, as an educator, a community builder who has actually been invited to some of these very prestigious events in the community. And just on Wednesday, 2 days ago, I actually spoke to a virtual global community of 10,000 about tree equity as a Latinx woman who actually runs a climate meetup. I spoke to 10,000 people about tree equity, and I didn't necessarily reference the entirety of this project, but I did say I have working knowledge and that trees are being cut down in my city, and that is a tree equity issue because our tree canopy is only 29%, whereas the standard for healthy urban forest canopy is 40%. We're well below that. And also earlier this week, I spoke to Forterra, who had a long relationship with the city of Des Moines with the Green City Partnership. That partnership has since ceased because they've discontinued the Green Cities program. So basically, there's no one managing our urban forest right now, and we're losing canopy and planting brand new trees that take 20 years to mature. That means 20 years of no urban forest canopy, and our health is being degraded on a daily basis. The air quality, the carbon sequestration, the oxygen that those mature trees provide. We're losing all of that for 20 years. What are we gonna do in that time? We're losing access to our trails for who knows how long. We're losing continuity. We're losing a community gathering space. We all have made friends. We've all built community around these trails, around these green spaces. I know families are using it. I know the elderly are using it. I know people, everyone of all kinds are using that. It's a community gathering space that brings diverse communities together, and we're going to lose that the way it is today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Just want to check again with the room if there's anyone that I didn't call that wants to provide any comments. No, you get one shot at the. Do we have people attending via remote? Can you just give me I don't know if everyone wants to provide comments. How many attendees do we have? There's 20 altogether. Okay, well, let's do this. Is there like a raise hand function? So for anyone that's viewing this via Zoom, if you could utilize the raise hand function, and we'll get to you one at a time. We can I'll allow you to just bring up anyone that's holding up their hand here. And will I be able to see them on this screen? What's the name? If Laura can turn on your video, and you may need to unmute yourself as well. Okay.
Okay.
Great. Well, I can trust.
Hi,
I can't
everybody.
see, but I can trust that you will raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
Thank you. And can you go ahead and state and spell your name for the record?
Laura Hartema, Laura, Hartema, Hartema.
Great. You can go ahead.
John, I prepared a slideshow, so I'm hoping that they can post that and then I'm able to see it as they move through the slides, or should I share my screen?
I don't know if you have that. Okay. And then, yeah, I'm going to allow you to do that, but if you could please try to limit it to around 3 minutes.
Ooh, I'll try. I'll talk really fast. Okay, everybody, my name is Laura Hartema. I've been should I go?
Go for it, yeah.
Okay. I've been a Des Moines resident since 1996, and I've been leading the Friends of Des Moines Creek Community Group since '99. And I'm an ecologist, and my job is to design, build, construct, and monitor restoration projects. So this is near and dear to my heart. Des Moines Creek is my backyard. I will move on with try to keep it focused here, but on this first slide, I'm just showing you this is the project area, and I'm going to whip through next slide. So this is the master plan, and these are kind of all the actions, big manipulation of the site, of the groundwater, there's stormwater treatment, there's a huge detention pond, there's underground facilities, there's complete and partial filling of wetlands, streams, ravines. They're redirecting flows and French drains and pipes. They're altering wetlands and their buffers. They're removing over 500 trees. And these trees are not just crappy old trees. These are, some of them are considered landmark trees. They're over 25 inches. Some are over 5 feet in diameter where you can't even hug them. They're so big. This proposal is over 30 acres total of disturbance. There's been no mention of any of the arsenic in the soils. There's obvious arsenic in these soils. I don't know how that would be remediated. No information. There's huge impacts to the neighborhood and to the neighbors. I feel sorry for the people who have to live next door to this if this monstrosity happens. And then just the decreased property values with the removal of this green space for not only the adjacent properties, but all of the properties. So all this to me indicates that we need more environmental review, such as an EIS. Next slide. And I have a lot to say, so I'm going to go fast. People keep saying, oh, this is, you know, it's a crappy trees. There's not that many trees. It's not, you know, they're residential. Well, look at this aerial, 1936 to 2023. It pretty much remains unchanged, except the trees are a lot bigger and there's more of them. So next slide. Someone else showed this slide earlier. In the last 10 years, all these lots here with the big X's over them used to be forested space that has now been reduced to a bunch of detention ponds for stormwater and impervious surface in huge, ugly buildings that nobody wants. So there's been no, the cumulative effects of all these developments have not been shared, and how that impacts the project and environmental critical areas. Next slide. Yeah, so this just shows that the north part of this project is in a landslide and severe erosion. This is an active ravine. Most of Des Moines Creek in the upper region is very steep and at high risk. And there's just a development just upstream that causes a huge slough, not probably within the last 2 years or so. So this is likely to happen. Next slide. So I want to know that the scale of this project, as some other people have mentioned, this is 5 times the size of the Safeway lot. And if you drive down the road, you see the OR, the Oregon Research, the building that holds Oregon Research. I can't point to it, but it's right next, it's just west of the Safeway. This is going to be 1.5 times the size of that Oregon Research housed building. It's ridiculous. It has no place in our neighborhood. And these parcels were not always business park. They were residentially zoned, and they just recently converted to business park. Next slide. I can't explain enough how important this corridor is and how this building bisects, fragments, divides this one last corridor in critical areas. It links Des Moines Creek from Puget Sound to Des Moines Creek to Barnes Creek in the white area that divides, that goes south, and then all the way to Massey Creek. They have fish. They're very important, and it's a migration route, and it's our life, and it's our air quality. And this property also matters because it's a corridor on 216th between the post office, between our retirement homes, between the parks, the community centers, and the library. And it's just going to be this big building that has no place. It needs to not be there. Okay, so this
part about, I don't want to cut you off. I just, I want to make sure we get to all the people who want to comment today.
Oh, great. Okay, next slide.
Approximately how many slides left do you have?
I just have a couple more. I just want to this is really important, and I think mine is especially important because I have such background in this, and this is important stuff to share that the public needs to hear. so this is also a biodiversity corridor, priority habitat. Wetland C is part of that, but wetland D is part of that. Okay, next slide. This is a really big one, and I don't think many people have mentioned this, but PSM, pre-spawn mortality, is happening in our coho today. And the fish are starting to run right now. And this 6 ppb quinone is a preservative in tires, and this development is going to increase the amount of that is going into our water, and it directly is a contributor and killer of fish. Just to make it short, next slide. These are just all the critical areas. I mean, I don't need to go into the details, but there's a lot of impacts on site. And the variance they're asking for is for this stream Y, which is a ravine, and they're just going to drain it and fill it and move it somewhere else. And we don't know how these are going to impact offsite. There's just not enough information that's been revealed. So we need an EIS for that. Next slide. Again, the north part of this project is in a steep ravine, landslide, and erosion area. It's actively eroding. It will happen. It happened upstream. It should not be allowed. Next slide. So I just feel that the code and the levels of protection are inadequate for this development proposal. It does not need to be this big. We do not need this monstrosity. We do not need this building. We can do something that makes sense for our neighborhood and for our area. This is a super, super important link of green space and critical area from Des Moines Creek to Barnes Creek to Miller Creek to Puget Sound, and it should not be undervalued, and it needs special protection. The SEPA checklist and all the information was very vague, very minimal, and it does not equal the impact to this site. I submitted all this.
Sorry, would you like your slide presentation admitted as an exhibit, and then I can review that a little more thoroughly?
Yes.
Great.
And can I just finish off this last comment?
Yeah, your final thoughts, that'd be great.
Yeah, I just want to say the issuing of variance is not in the best interest of the public, and nor is it a good land use of this property. Whether it's zoned as a business, whatever, or not, we can do it appropriately. We do not need to impact the wetlands. They're already shrinking the buffers, filling wetlands, don't care about the small ones in the first place. They're the code is less than King County. So Des Moines Creek would have a much bigger buffer if it was regulated by King County, but because it's Des Moines, it does not. So anyway, I request that we revise the determination from a mitigated to environmental impact statement. That would give us a little bit more information to make a decision, but my vote is no. And the next slide. Also, I submitted a letter and I referenced a bunch of code and a whole bunch of my thoughts. This is a list. I don't know if you want me to go through it or I have time.
I'll take a careful look at all of this.
Okay, because this is what I think is inadequate. Offsite impacts to neighbors, property values. I feel sorry for everybody that lives near this thing if it happened. There's not enough information to say rerouting these flows into wetland D and stream Z, and there's no significant impact. It's offsite. It's barely even mentioned. The buffers are not even on hardly any of the plans. I think the geology report was the only thing where I saw the ravine buffer on.
But this isn't even relevant to the permit hearing.
Thank you. I'm gonna admit your slides into the record, so I'll have a chance.
Okay, I got cut off. No problem.
Thank you for participating today.
Thank you. I appreciate that little bit extra time. It was a lot of work. So I
And
appreciate
that's something you have. You
my
can forward
input.
to me. Great. Thank you. Who else do we have?
Thank you.
Thank you. If Anne can go ahead and turn on your camera and unmute.
Oh. All right. Ann Craker, I presume you are talking about?
Yeah, great. Can you go ahead and raise your right hand? I can't see you on my screen right now, but I'll trust that.
Okay.
You did, so.
It is up?
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
Yes, I do.
Great. And can
And
you go ahead and spell your name again for the record?
I will do. Ann, A-N-N-E, Craker, K-R-O-E-K-E-R.
Thank you.
Thank you. I am a a 10-year resident of Des Moines. I'm also a co-president of our 25-year private foundation in conservation and education, but the conservation partners such as Trout Unlimited, Future Wise, Forterra, and all of these groups are not only just environmentally oriented, but also community oriented. So over the years, I have definitely learned a few things, and this is what I'm relating to as far as building in appropriate places and not building in other places that where our wildlife and our habitat needs to be. I hope that earlier when I submitted my letter to you, that is already in the record. And it was a letter I submitted to the Port of Seattle 3.5 years ago when they first announced that they just acquired this land and they're very excited about doing another industrial development. It outlines many of my concerns. I have even more concerns now. Some of them have to do with rerouting streams, which is actually not nothing that works. And it's very surprising that anybody would include that in the 21st century development. I hadn't also put in wildlife corridors, and the fact that 20-year maturity of trees is certainly not enough for canopy and for also carbon sequestration, let alone all the other values that trees offer us. What I didn't see and haven't said yet and haven't heard yet is that the culture of our city of Des Moines is really being degraded if we go ahead with this project. Not only is there a loss of green, but the buildings and the land won't belong to the city and to the people. And when that happens, there's not care for the land. There's not care for the community spaces. And that happens over and over again. It's just the way people are. These particular land and building development, if it's like the other so-called business park that they've done, is edge to edge, some impervious cement, and it's sprawling. It serves outside the city. It doesn't support our local economy. Very few people are employed there who also live in Des Moines. This will cause congestion, activity that doesn't concern us, the people, and one more step for our city to not have a personality and to have a space, more spaces where we can communicate and congregate and enjoy each other's company along with our natural beauty and our local economy. So thank you very much for letting me comment today, and I look forward to the rest of the hearing.
Thank you for attending. Is there an Olivia? You could turn on
Yeah,
your
I'm
video.
here.
You go ahead and raise your right hand. I'll trust that you're doing so.
Yes, I'm doing so now.
You swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today.
I do swear.
Thank you. And can you state and spell your name for the recording?
Yes, my name is Olivia Bronson, Olivia Bronson.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna keep mine brief. I did time myself, so I'll try not to run over time. I'm a homeowner and a local artist here in Des Moines. I can see my house in all of those slides that the previous speakers just before me actually showed on their screen. So that's kind of fun. And I can see the creek from behind my house out my window right now. I'm an artist here in Des Moines, as well as an active member and volunteer of the Washington Native Plant Society. I'm asking you to consider the impacts this project will have on residents like me nearby. I'm in a working class neighborhood and I'm just downstream. Like I said, I can see my house on the slides. It's kind of funny. Right along the ravine in that critical landslide area that one of the previous speakers talked about. As do many others that are speaking here today are right along the creek. And I would say the applicant ignoring the adjacent plots of land as they are like in a vacuum on our water table is really disingenuous and short-sighted. Water flows downhill and and our water district should be included here in further decisions. Furthermore, it's a fact that industrialization lowers property values, and I am concerned about that. I bought my first house here. I highly doubt any of the city officials or wealthy lawyers here would tolerate a project of this magnitude being built in their backyard, less than half a mile upstream, as we are being asked to. But the baked-in classism of increasing traffic and ecological impacts so that the burdens are primarily shouldered by marginalized communities and working-class people surrounding the port properties is just a theme of port development in this area. As many people illustrated today, Des Moines is already one of the most environmentally impacted communities by port expansion. The applicant is asking us, and the city is asking us, to consent to the destruction of hundreds of mature trees whose replacement, species like Douglas fir and Pacific drone, on the mitigation documents will take up to 2 decades, assuming they are in ideal growing conditions. Madrones have a really high failure rate to provide a real canopy again. Many people like me have bought homes here to raise families nearby, with the green belt as a major consideration for our purchases, and nature paths being a source of appeal. Who other than the port or the applicant standing to profit from it could consider this a logical improvement? Many people use the connection to walk their dogs, hike, or get to downtown safely, myself included. For some perspective, 20 years is enough time for a child to be born, grow up, and go to college. 20 years is enough time to adopt a dog and then bury it. In 20 years, retirees and some of the people in this room and elderly who make up a large portion of our voting populace will not be around to benefit from any replacement trees. 20 years represents several generations of wildlife whose shorter lifespans will absolutely feel the impacts of this short-sighted industrial bloat of a building project. And there is little assuring us, with the way that these previous warehouse operations have gone and how the adjacent lots have been developed, disappearing our trees over the years, that the recommended amount of trees or even the native species on the mitigation document will be returned to this area. This does not replace or improve the function of the property as it is currently being used and assumed by the residents. The city of Des Moines is again pushing its citizens to accept a proposal that will have lasting impacts on our environment, health, and well-being. Its elected officials would be showing us, the voting members of the public, that they are fine with selling us out for a few $100,000 in a one-time sale. Land owned by the port is tax exempt and will not earn the city's bleeding treasury any long-term benefit. There are documented concerns from the water district who spoke today to wells downslope from this project. The city has already failed to mitigate some of the existing damage that harms our salmon-bearing streams and lags behind our neighbors in preserving the recommended minimum of 40% urban tree canopy. Coastal erosion, flooding, and landslides will only intensify as water levels from climate change rise and storms worsen worldwide. Canopy loss and wetland removal will impact this community, not if, but when. What a green light for the industrial building will do, especially in the absence of an EIS, is motivate alien constituents within this room and without to find better representatives who consider our future. Thank you so much for your time, Your Honor.
Thank you for attending. About how many, do you know how many are raising their hands? Okay, let's check one more time here. If you are participating via the remote technology, if you'd like to provide comments, please raise your hand now. This is going to be the last opportunity to do so. Jackie, if you could turn on your camera or.
Hi.
Okay, great. Can you please raise your right hand? I'll trust you're doing so.
Yes.
You. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
Yes.
Thank you. And can you just go ahead and state and spell your name for the recording?
Jacqueline Dahlquist, JACKLYNDAHLQUIST.
Great, thank you.
So I am not a resident of Des Moines. I do hold a master's in public health from the University of Washington and am a avid activist of native plants and spaces. And as I've been listening the past few hours to this hearing, I didn't prepare anything, but I just want to make it abundantly clear how important these spaces are. I know everyone has been talking about the trees and the loss of canopy space, and that is super important, but I also want to recognize the importance of the rest of the animal and plant life that lives in these spaces as well. That is just something that you can't replicate. Even in 20 years, if those trees grew to the same size, you would lose all of the soil biodiversity, especially with development. Development is horrible for the soil. It it kills the soil essentially. And that is difficult to replace, along with all the native herbaceous perennials, all of the shrubs, all of the mammals, all of the insects, all of the microbiome, all of the little things that live in the soil and the water. Just that is so important to preserve, and it's not something that you can just quickly get back in a couple years, even 20 years necessarily. So that I just want everyone to keep that in mind as well. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have anybody else on the? Okay, great. So before I turn to the applicant and city for any responses, how are we feeling as far as, do we need a break? Do we need a longer break, short break?
I actually would like to call our wetlands expert, and he has a hard stop at 1:45. So could we call
Let's do
him?
that
And
then.
then,
Great.
okay,
And then we'll
fabulous.
readdress taking a break. after.
Excellent. And Ms. King, could you pull up Exhibit C17, sheet 40, it's page 47 of that PDF. It's a conceptual mitigation plan map. C17, like the airplane, I guess. And page 47 of the PDF. And then this is John Pickett, and he's actually on the Zoom.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Pickett?
Mr. Examiner.
Yes. Well, I can't see you, but if you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do, and my right hand was up.
Okay, great. And can you please spell your name for the record and explain your role with this proposal?
Yeah, John Pickett, Jon-Pickett, and I'm a principal consultant at Soundview Consultants. Our office did the on-site wetland investigation, the wetland delineation report, the conceptual mitigation plan, biological evaluation, JARPA, as well as coordination with the various agencies that have been involved with the project. So although this is a very colorful drawing, I think it really does a good job explaining the differences in terms of the mitigation aspects that we're doing out on site. So just to kind of clarify the different types of mitigation, we're doing wetland creation for the direct impacts to wetlands A, C, and D. That's the green area that you see between on the right side of your screen, between wetland C and wetland B. Those two areas are essentially going to be excavated out to develop wetland conditions. And similarly, that's going to take place over adjacent to wetland D. These areas will stay hydraulically connected to the groundwater table. In discussions with the project engineer and the geotech, have a very shallow surface flow from the adjacent stormwater ponds. In addition, the wetland C currently receives hydrology from the offsite stormwater pond from the Des Moines Creek Business Park development adjacent to the east. That hydrology will still be connected through wetland C. It'll essentially discharge from the stormwater pond into wetland C. However, there'll be a portion of it that is going to be diverted to the north, which if you look over on the left side of your screen, there's a newly created stream channel, which is kind of that orange figure going that has sinuosity going to the north to wetland D. A portion of, as I mentioned, a portion of that stormwater will be diverted into this area to create this stream channel and maintain the hydrology. We work with the project engineer, and on page 29 of this report, which you don't need to switch to now, it demonstrates the flows that we prepared to show under various events. So a 2-year event that the stormwater would from the outfall from the storm pond, a 10-year event, as well as a 100-year event. The newly created stream channel also to mitigate for the direct impacts to the stream channel on the west side of the site is being mitigated in this area. And that's that, as I mentioned, that orange color that has sinuosity through the middle of the site. It's going to be an approximately 3-foot wide stream channel with 3-to-1 slopes on each side. In addition, kind of jumping over to the purple areas, there's a light and dark purple area. The dark purple area is predominantly buffer enhancement. It's existing buffer area that's going to be underplant or overplanted. The current conditions within this slope in the mitigation area is fairly degraded. There's knotweed, there's reed canary grass, there's blackberries. It's not a very diverse planting palette, and so our plan is to replant this area heavily with native vegetation. In addition, that lighter pink area that you observe, that's buffer creation. So that's areas that are outside the existing or standard buffer that we will be replanting again with a diverse native planting palette. This also is going to be the areas where the tree mitigation at a 3-to-1 ratio will be provided on site. These trees are going to be spec'd to the city's tree code requirements for the tree sizing calculation, which is approximately a 2-inch caliper. If you have any specific questions on the tree replacement and tree density requirements, I'd refer to the arborist that also is on this call, and she'd be happy to answer any questions. I will note that this plan that you're looking at, there has been interagency coordination with the Department of Ecology, as well as the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And we're working to remove 4 additional trailer stalls to lessen the overall impacts, as well as to preserve a western white pine tree on site that there was significant public comments on. So with that, I'm open to any questions that you may have for me.
I don't have any specific questions for you, Ms. Rogers. Is there any other testimony you wanted to elicit?
No, I don't have any other questions. I just wanted to make sure that plan got explained because it is very colorful and hard to follow sometimes.
Great. Thank you for being here.
Yep, thank you.
All right, do we want to address taking a break, or I guess, how long do you anticipate providing any more responses to public comments? Witnesses that you're going to present.
I'm just going to call one witness to respond to the Water District 54's concerns, and other than that, make a few comments in terms of my own response to the code responses to some of the comments I heard, or we could throw that into our post-hearing briefing.
Yeah, to the extent you can address those today so that members of the public can hear that.
Yeah, I think we're good to go. We want to just keep.
Do we want to push through here?
Sure.
Okay, let's do that. And if we end up getting to 2, I'll probably insist on a break at that point. So.
Fair enough.
Okay. So I'll let the applicant take the floor here.
Great. Then the next witness I'd like to call is Carolyn Decker, who's here with us.
Sworn in? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
Yes.
And can you go ahead and state and spell your name for the record and explain your role with this project?
Carolyn Decker, CarolynDecker, and I am the project geotechnical engineer. I have been a geotechnical engineer with Terra Associates for the last 18 years.
Thank you.
I'm up here to discuss the wellhead protection zone that was brought up, requesting that we review that and ensure that we have taken it into consideration with the project. We have addressed it, we were aware of it, and we wanted to make sure that we took care of any mitigation that may have needed to come from that. The site itself is capped with a very thick layer of glacial till material, which is a silty sand with gravel that has been overrun by about 3 miles of glaciers. It's very dense, it's very cemented, it has very low permeability. It's actually considered an impermeable material. So any water that is currently hitting the site is more likely to run off than to infiltrate down into the aquifer that is below this layer. So any water that currently hits the site is running off. Any water that we would move around due to development would follow that similar pattern. None of it is going to go to the outwash layer that underlies that till.
And was that addressed in your geotechnical report?
It is. It's on page 8 of our geotechnical report.
Which I believe is Exhibit C13.
Yes.
And I did read that. I can't remember all the details off the top of my head.
That is all right.
Okay. Well, was there any other information you'd like to present, or is there anything you want to elicit?
Just one more question, I guess. Were you here? 2 more questions, maybe. You were here earlier for the testimony from the gentleman from Water District 54, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and are you able to provide him comfort that his concerns have been addressed and that there's not an issue?
I would certainly hope so. It certainly is something that we have looked at, we are aware of. It is something that we review on all projects to ensure that we are maintaining hydrology that currently exists, particularly to wellheads. And if there is any infiltration that does need to occur on the site to continue to recharge those aquifers, we make sure that is taken care of.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. And then Ms. Rogers, the
Okay.
floor is yours.
Then I will go just limited rebuttal to the public testimony, focus really only on the master plan and variance because that is the topic of this portion of the hearing and not the SEPA appeal. Just a few general comments. You've heard tree replacement. Actually, Mr. Pickett already covered this. It's at a 3-to-1 ratio that complies with code. You can see the locations on the site where that primary tree replacement is occurring. I heard multiple concerns about the size of the building. The building is sized to meet all code standards. It's actually underneath some of the code standards in terms of its size and height. There were concerns about the west property line and the impact on the residential neighbors on that property line. When you look at the plan sheets, you'll see that there is a substantial setback from this western property line. There's a 20-foot landscape setback and another, I couldn't find a dimension plan as I was sitting here, but it's like at least another 80 feet, so at least another 100 feet or so, and then parking and then a building. And there's also topography and that building will be up above. The whole thing is sloped. So there is a substantial setback. It's not going to be a warehouse looming over and landscape as well. Cover the trees. The arborist report, and this is at exhibit C14 in the arborist report and exhibit C23 in the biological evaluation, talk about the tree planting. Obviously, there is going to be a net loss of tree canopy cover initially. That's the only way that the development can happen. But the significant restoration and enhancement planting efforts are actually going to restore a third of the site, ending up with a vertically and horizontally diverse canopy structure within 10 to 20 years, and increased canopy cover in those areas, which frankly right now are dominated by invasive species, as you heard Mr. Pickett testify to. And so the conclusion of the biological evaluation was that the proposed mitigation is going to result in a denser tree canopy, non-native invasives, and interspersion of upland and wetland habitat, which is all altogether anticipated to result in a smaller but a much higher functioning natural space on site. And the new trail, of course, which will be a permanent trail protected in an easement, is walking through that new natural space.
Great. I'll turn to the city to see if they have any responses to the concerns that were raised by members of the public.
Your Honor, we have nothing further other than what's in the staff report and in the brief that was submitted.
Can you just briefly just speak to the notice that was provided and then if that complies with the city code?
Yes, it does, Your Honor. And that's addressed in our staff report, but I think there was a statement where there was some confusion about a virtual hearing and notice that was received. So the city notices for the city's actions. And apparently the Port of Seattle, through their process, had a virtual hearing regarding a purchase of property that was outside of these parcels, but related to the project.
Okay.
That was completely, it was not, I mean, I guess you could say related to this, but it wasn't an action that the city was taking. So the notices were received by those required to receive notice. And then a couple days later, there was a virtual hearing by the Port of Seattle that was unrelated to the notice that was received. And so I think that's where there was some confusion about notices being late. The notice referred to the city's SEPA decision and was noticed within the timeframe as required by our city code and by law.
Thank you for clarifying that. Are there any last thoughts on behalf of the city or applicant before I adjourn the hearing? I'll let your council decide. Okay, thank you. Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the hearing today. I do want to thank everyone for participating. I have a lot to consider here. I believe is the code, it provides me 15 or 14 business days from the close of the record, which would occur in 2 weeks. Okay, it's my intention to meet that deadline. Again, I'll be issuing decisions on the SEPA appeal and permit application concurrently. My intent is to do so within 14 business days of the record closing, which will happen in 2 weeks. And then I guess I'll ask the city, how can members of the public obtain my decisions when they're issued?
We will send it to all parties of record. We'll send that out. Either the document or a link to it. And we'll also post it on our permit system, permit tracks.
So that's
Under the
available through
permit,
the city
that is,
website?
yeah,
Okay,
available to the public.
great. Thank you so much. All right, well, with that, I will go ahead and adjourn the hearing. Thanks again, and I hope you can enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend. Thank you.